when they decide they want the oil underneath your house, and then you gotta
exactly.
get the fuck out of here.
They might just be like, you know what, your house looks real good for some fracking. We need to frack right where your bedroom is.
You got a lot of fracking that needs to be happening right underneath you.
You have frackable territory on your property.
There's a lot of frackable territory on your
We need to come in and
We're
do
gonna
some
need you to sell that to us.
Yeah.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself!
What is up, Internet? Welcome back to the podcast. This is three averagely intelligent dudes discussing dangerous ideas. And we have a very, very dangerous one that probably a lot of you feel like you know a lot about. And I did too, until we decided that we were going to talk about it.
Yeah, I learned a lot in the research for this.
Yeah, me too.
I'm still here to learn, so I didn't get to study as much as I'd like to on the topic, but I'm interested to
I like
figure
that
out
perspective. Like,
what
it's always
we learn.
nice when somebody that we're discussing with is learning something new about the experience with the listeners, because it's kind of like a, it's
Yeah,
relatable.
agreed.
If we're all up here and like we all got numbers and stats,
We
and
got
stuff,
all the
they can
information,
kind of feel a little
baby.
bit left out, maybe.
Yeah.
But now everybody's like, oh, didn't know that.
It's
So
a good
it's a
viewpoint.
good vibe.
I get to ask the questions that they're thinking at home. you
True.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can be like a voice for
Instead
the
of
audience.
like trying to also proliferate my own idea here, I'm like, well, what about that? Well, what?
Yeah.
Well, what am I? Well, how does your idea fit into that?
Yeah.
And well, I guess we should go ahead and just say we're talking about climate change.
Climate
Yeah, it
change.
is.
Yeah, we're
Talking
going to talk
about
about
climate change, baby.
We're going to talk about the Green New Deal. We're also going to kind of look at reactions to the Green New Deal, as well as some kind of science and a little history.
Mhm.
You know, we're going to do a little bit of that younger Dryas.
We got some dry ass.
We got some dry ass for you. We got some Paleolithic dry ass.
I don't think you ever want to say younger dry ass.
Oh,
But that's
sorry, that one got me. That was good. Yeah, the older dry ass
Be
is
careful
actually the
the-
first ice age.
the Q peoples. They're not gonna take very fondly to you.
Yeah, I mean, we
Start
are
talking like that.
We're in Los Angeles.
That's true. You can't be talking about that. Even though the most dry ass all around.
Well, hey, once climate change hits, everybody gonna have dry ass because half this motherfucking Earth gonna be dry ass.
Good point.
So is
Or
that-
will it be wet ass?
Yeah, I was gonna
the
say,
what's really gonna happen?
what happens? Does it get colder or does it get hotter?
Well, that depends on.
They haven't figured it out yet.
Let me tell you about the Milinkovic cycles.
Yeah, we got a lot. So, well,
I
let's
got a lot to
just-
get to.
Let's go ahead and just bust into, I think, what is like the most relevant climate change topic of the day, like the subtopic within, which is the Green New Deal.
I think everybody's
that's the
familiar with
political
this.
version.
But
You've
if
at
you're
least
not-
heard it. Somebody that you know has said it, and like you're not really sure what's in it. Like, is it even a thing, or is it just like an idea?
Communism.
Is it communism? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna try to break it down a little bit for you guys and see if we can't make some stew out of this mess.
We're gonna use our average intellect
Yeah.
to take a peek
Extremely
a-
average.
at some
You
of
know,
this dense legal language.
Every day I realize how much more average my intelligence
Oh,
is
yes.
than I like.
Oh yes.
It
It seems to be falling every single day I read a new book.
It's just so much more average. Yeah, indeed.
And you'd think that would be the opposite.
It's not.
It's not.
The only thing I know about the Green New Deal is AOC.
AOC.
That's
all
what
I
everybody
know.
knows because
the AOC
and it's weird
loves
how
that
it
shit.
is. It's like, so-and-so put their name on this bill. And that's like all you ever know is like, hey, if we ever
haven't,
find out this was fuck shit,
We're
you
coming
put
back
your
for you,
name
yeah.
on it.
I haven't corroborated this, but I have heard that very similar to the way that Obamacare was actually a few years ago written by Republican people. And then Obamacare, they came in, the Democrats tweaked some things, slapped Obama's name on it. I heard that AOC is actually not the writer or had anything to do with the writing of the bill.
She found it and she was like, hey, this is a good idea.
Yeah, so I'd be very interested to find out who actually wrote this bill, because it's funny, the celebrity politicians are not the people that actually write a lot of these bills. That's why it's kind of funny, like Joe Biden wrote the crime bill. Like, he wrote that bitch.
Yeah, he was.
That's
like,
one of the
deep
few
in it.
times, and like that's back when
Who
who
wrote the Green New Deal?
Yeah, that's actually back when he was not famous. So that statement still stands. The famous people don't actually write the bills.
Yeah.
Throughout the 70s and 1990s, an economic policy to move the United States economy away from more non-renewable energy was developed by activists in the labor and the environmental movements. An early use of the phrase Green New Deal was by journalist Thomas Friedman.
Okay, so a journalist actually coined the term, or at least used it early.
It wasn't actually
like a bill.
introduced. Yeah, it was included in the Energy Act of 2011 and came into force on. Oh, this is the Green Deal. They want the new one.
Oh yeah.
The Green New Deal.
Well, because like the New Deal, like the New Deal part of it it harkens back to the original New Deal. And I think that the idea is like the Green New Deal, like they want to tie in that, because a lot of people consider the New Deal being one of the things that really brought the country back from the brink of
The
like,
Green Deal.
Yeah. No, the New Deal.
Oh,
The New Deal by what was his name?
How many fucking deals have we made about this shit already?
They've been
Well,
talking about
no,
it for
the
a
New
long
Deal had
time.
nothing to do with climate change, really. Like that's what I'm saying. Like the New Deal was implemented. I'm fucking spacing on which president it was. I want to say
It's like Roosevelt
or
yeah,
FDR, one of those.
Yeah.
But I think it was
It's
FDR.
the same guy,
the New
Franklin
Deal.
Delano Roosevelt. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It was
FDR.
post World War II, New Deal. Trying to get everybody jobs, get
See,
the
it's
economy
average.
going again. Yeah. So it
Right,
was,
average on the intelligence.
the Green New Deal is apparently we've been talking about it for a long time, but 18 Democratic members of Congress were co-sponsoring a proposed House Select Committee on a Green New Deal.
So
And incoming representatives Ayanna Pressley and Joel Negus. You ever seen that meme where it's
Negusa?
like, spell Negus?
Is that how you pronounce it? Negus?
No.
Oh.
I don't know how you pronounce this man's name, but the meme is that where it's like this little white kid and he's at a spelling bee.
Negus.
Negus. What is the language of origin?
Ethiopian to Amharic.
What is the definition?
A king. It's used as a title of the sovereign of Ethiopia. Negus.
Negus. Could you use it in a sentence?
Ethiopia. Negus.
Negus. Could you use it in a sentence?
The Negus ruled Ethiopia until the coup of 1974.
What?
No.
Negus.
He's looking over there like,
Negus.
Andrew, would you say the word loudly for the judges?
Negus.
One more time.
Negus.
Negus.
Negus. Negus. Negus.
You did it. You did it, kid.
My nigga.
Dude, what was that? That was terrible.
Can you say it one more time a little bit louder, please?
Yeah, and again.
And again, clearly for the judges, please.
Like, if you can, isn't the whole thing is about spelling? Like, you don't have to be able to say it right, do you?
No, they wanted to make sure that he knew what word he was trying to spell, so they were like trying to make sure that he understood the pronunciation, like
Well,
the word.
it's that
But it
made
sounded
them
like a
look
setup.
terrible.
They
I
certainly
felt
did not.
so bad for that guy.
I don't think they made the connection at all. Even in the slightest. Like, as somebody who, I remember we were doing like a little school-wide, and that was in Stanley, North Carolina, by the way. We were doing a little school-wide spelling bee thing. I remember they gave you the book, and it was like, here's the nationwide spelling bee study book, and it had words like that in there, where it's like, you got to know that shit.
Yeah.
They're gonna ask you if you ask questions like, what is this, what is that, they're gonna be like, yeah, say the word. What is the word? Spell it right.
Say their names.
It's crazy. But yeah, it was yeah.
Okay, so I
It
don't.
was-
Yeah, I, don't
I
remember
think
how we
I
got
think
onto
his
that.
name was Neguse.
Yeah, and this is really good
Neguse, yeah.
information here. A week after the 2018 midterm elections, climate justice group Sunrise Movement organized a protest in Nancy Pelosi's office calling on Pelosi to support a Green New Deal. On the same day, AOC launched a resolution to create a committee on the Green New Deal, and then several candidates came out supporting it. And this is kind of where the squad,
The squad.
And
that
Yeah,
kind of
just
stuff
substitute
gained its
all
popularity.
of these blue names for squad.
Well, yeah, because they're
I'm just
what
kidding.
they have kind of promoted it. So if you
No,
look
I
at the
know.
Green New Deal that we have pulled up at the very top, it says Ms. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at the top of it. Now, she may not have wrote it, like you said,
Yeah.
but they're the ones who are
Started to champion the idea again.
championing the
Which
idea.
this
is a
was
good way to
actually
put it.
very fascinating, though. This is what I thought was interesting because of a debate that we had off camera a while back. All due to the climate justice group Sunrise Movement organized a protest in Nancy Pelosi's office. which I didn't know you could protest in their offices, first of all. So that's a whole new concept to me, which is
It's like
dope.
lobbying,
Well-
except anti.
Yeah.
You can right up until the point that the security people arrive to escort you off the
Yeah.
premises.
But I mean, imagine how this goes down though. So then really it's like these people and they're like, this is fucking bullshit. You know, and then somebody's like, security, get these people out of there. And all of a sudden Nancy's like, wait. I want to hear what they have to say.
I mean, there might be video of this somewhere. You know
I'm
what
pretty
I'm
sure
saying?
I've seen video of this.
I think I've seen it too.
Ocasio-Cortez
Yeah.
standing in an office with many people sitting on the
Yeah.
floor, giving a whole speech about how proud she was of everybody there for whatever it is that they were doing.
And she's
And
like,
she said
"I'll
some wild
champion
shit,
this."
and I was like, I'm out.
AOC Sunrise movement.
I want to let you all know how proud I am of each and every single one of you for putting yourselves and your bodies.
My mom's never said that before.
I'm missing all of this now.
Single one of you.
Oh, they're all of
Proud
them.
I am.
Look at that.
Each
The
and
look
every
of
single
just
one of
pure,
you for putting
like,
yourselves and your bodies and everything on the line to make sure that we save our planet, our generation, and our future. It's so incredibly important. I've shared with you all.
She's just
I've
coming
shared
into
my
work.
story that
showed up
that
for
my
this
journey
shit.
here started at Standing Rock.
Hey,
and it
I'd be willing to
started
bet
with
she took a
everyday
Uber there.
people
Oh,
doing
yeah.
exactly
Yeah,
what you all
you
were
made that
doing.
point.
Takes the train.
No, she does not, bro.
Doesn't she take the train?
No. During her
Whoa.
campaign,
He's
It's
like
very
so like
It's very
adamantly
intensely
pissed
loud.
off by
Bro.
the fact that she's using taxpayer dollars to take Ubers.
yes,
He's going,
in
go,
the
go.
city with the greatest public transportation system in the whole country.
I've just never heard
She
this.
spent
so.
over $10,000 in Ubers, a company that she rails against constantly. It's incredible. Bernie Sanders' campaign, exclusively, one of the only campaigns that exclusively uses Ubers. They don't ever take taxis. He also rails on Uber constantly. It's very hilarious. As a matter of fact, she spent just $4,000 on the last election in California Ubers, even though her district is in Brooklyn.
Because she's working on the Green New Deal.
Because she was probably visiting some people in Silicon Valley, I would imagine.
Raising funds. Or something. Either way, I never
While
heard
she spends your money on
I
Ubers.
can't really get excited about it because I've never seen the hypocrisy. Like, I've never seen them rail against Uber or anything like that, you know?
Just type in
And,
AOC on Uber.
Well, I mean, like,
Oh, I got you. I see.
Trust me. That's the last thing I'm doing on my free time. AOC and her Uber
Is
pattern.
AOC using
Yeah,
Ubers?
that's the last thing I'm looking at.
Because I'm not listening to anything she's got to say about the climate if
making it
this
sound
bitch
like
took
I
an Uber.
You're making it sound like I jumped into Google looking for that.
You gonna carpool? Not in my fucking environment.
It's not in my environment.
Like, that's actually helping. But
The things that I admire so much
Pause.
about
Maybe she takes the Uber Black and pays the extra money to make the guy shut the fuck up. Yeah, I'd like my Uber Black driver to not say a fucking
I'll
word.
tell you what, she definitely ain't hitting the fucking carpool button. You know what I mean? She's definitely taking
Not
a
riding
solo.
with
Saying
anybody
Uber
else.
sharing.
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah, the
Pool. Uber
Lyft
pool.
share,
Yeah.
Uber pool.
She ain't sharing that
She ain't
shit.
sharing. Nobody.
Leader Pelosi is that she comes from a space of activism and organizing, and so I think that she really
dude tweeting everything
appreciates
she says
civic
right now.
engagement, and really what I'm here to do
Him too.
is
Look at the guy behind him.
is just to support the folks who are here. This is an encouragement of her.
So,
An
anyway.
encouragement.
And this is to show that we're here to back up bold action, and that that she will be supportive.
She's trying to
in that.
spin it to say like this is to support Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, that's I mean
You
she's
typically don't have to do a sit-in on people that you
She's-
you support.
she's playing the game for sure.
Well, I mean, she's an amazing politician. Amazing.
But that's dope. So then, I mean, it really much after this, they were like, all right, let's,
We'll support it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why we have the
we'll
Green
get
New
at it
Deal that
that we're proposing now.
Yep.
Yep.
Very fascinating. I still didn't really catch up. I mean, I'll have to do this on my free time or something or whatever. Wow, COVID-19 in here somewhere. I would like to see, like you said, how it came to be, because you're right. Like they said, this thing been popping off since the 90s or something like
Oh
that.
yeah,
So-
the climate alarmists go back to, and we talked about this off the podcast, like where this kind of originated from. I wrote a blog post that kind of mentioned this, but it goes back to the 70s, right around the end of the 60s, kind of revolutionary civil rights movements and stuff like that, there was a huge push into like climate stuff, and all of these predictions and analyses that were coming out that were saying that we were running out of resources at a drastic rate and that we needed to change the way that we were operating. And so that's why like a lot of the climate stuff originates to the 70s, and it's to a guy, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but one of my clips, they mentioned his name. I found it this morning, so I didn't have time to like actually look him up, but I was like, oh, that's the guy.
He's the
John Allen was
overpopulation
asking.
guy? Yeah.
Yes, he's the guy that was making like bringing up these arguments to the forefront, kind of in the same way that we talked about AOC bringing the Green New Deal to the forefront.
Yeah, this was the overpopulation guy.
This guy, he was like very much looking at the data and seeing a very bad pattern and was like, yo, if we don't fucking do something by the year 2000, this whole thing's going to be out of here. I think he predicted that by the year 2000, there would only be 26 million people living in America.
And at the time...
Well, that was wildly inaccurate.
Wildly inaccurate. They also said that, I mean, like, wildly inaccurate. Hey, well, I mean, let me just go ahead and a little spoiler alert. The projection models have not become that much accurate when it comes to climate and resource stuff at all.
Interesting.
Because they can't predict. They can only predict if we do things exactly the same forever into the future.
They can't predict the
They can't predict the things
growth
that will
impact.
change once we start feeling the negative impacts and whatnot. So it's like,
not to mention, you just can't predict the weather. I mean, there's no such thing as like actually predicting what the weather is going to be.
But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay. All right.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Right.
Let's look at the Green New Deal. Let's look at the things that they're proposing, and so that we can kind of get a sense of like where at least this side of the aisle stands on like how the situation stands today.
And I think we should look at the beginning just to see some of those numbers. Page 1 and 2.
This is the actual proposal. Is this the bill?
If it's how many pages? It's like 50-something pages.
This is HRES 109, which is what they're talking about if you go to this Green New Deal Wikipedia.
Yeah.
This would be
House
a
Resolution 109.
remarkably short resolution then.
Fascinating.
They get right to the point with this baby.
Yeah. But where are we at here? Report entitled Special Report on Global Warming by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the November 2018 Fourth National Climate Assessment Report found.
So this is telling you all the things that they say this report found in 2018.
Yeah.
That's including human activity is the dominant cause of observed climate change over the past century. That's their first claim, which is just not like disputable. Like we can sit here and argue that all day.
Yeah, facts. I mean,
absolutely.
It's very subjective. I mean, where are your numbers? Like,
and now it also
right.
says,
I mean, and that's a long time. I mean, that includes the entire Industrial Revolution. So that's obviously going to be a big bump for them. But also, there's other things that have happened.
We have a changing climate is causing sea levels to rise and an increase in wildfires, severe storms, droughts, and other extreme weather events that threaten human life, healthy communities, and critical infrastructure.
I've actually seen multiple, just real quick, I've seen multiple people like source numbers that actually refute that. There was a guy who was testifying in front of Congress, and the guy was asking, like, have there been more tornadoes? And the guy was like, no, our data does not show that.
Well, see, I want to see that because, dude, living here in California, I believe it. Like,
And
you know what I
this
mean? Like,
is-
it makes it seem like, I mean, every month we got a fire, and if
Oh,
it's not
yeah.
a fire, it's a mudslide, and if it's not a fucking mudslide, it's
Oh, yeah.
The third point under this
an
beginning of the Green New Deal also is where it gets really into the numbers. Because
Oh,
what it
yeah.
says here in the third one is that global warming at or above 2 degrees Celsius beyond pre-industrialized levels will cause. And then all the things it says it's going to cause are like projections and models and numbers that aren't,
yeah, this is
they're
just
not
like,
concrete numbers. And
Well-
they're numbers that are like, look at this, 500 trillion.
Yeah, mass migration from the regions most affected by climate change, more than 500 trillion in lost annual economic output in the United States by the year 2100. Wildfires that by 2050 will annually burn at least twice as much forest area in the western United States than was typically burned by wildfires in the years preceding 2019. A loss of more than 99% of all coral reefs, more than 350
Billion.
billion?
Mhm.
Yeah, billion more people.
Oh, sorry, million.
No, that's
Yep,
million. I was like,
million.
I don't think
This
so.
one is trillion, though.
Yeah, more people to the exposed globally to deadly heat stress by 2050. And, okay, well, that won't be true if they all migrate. a risk of damage to $1 trillion of the public infrastructure and coastal real estate in the United States. And god damn, this bitch is long.
Yeah.
So basically what they're saying is shit gonna be really bad.
Yeah, they're saying this report found these things
Yeah.
and then used these things to make these predictions.
To make these, then they're trying to put a face to the monster with these
Right.
numbers,
Yeah.
right?
Like,
Because
to-
it's hard to.
Right.
You have to calculate the impact that this would have, with some type of quantity or.
Right,
yeah,
exactly. Like you have to
you got
figure
to
out
put the math
some
on
way.
it. Like we talked about.
Like
you gotta
how
put
is this
the
gonna
math
affect
on it.
me?
Yeah, like
This
what-
is like
how-
a group of people sounding an alarm, and then the U.S. government saying, "Okay, this is our best idea for a solution."
Yeah. That's what they're pitching up a solution to this
Right.
gigantic.
They're pitching a solution that they want the government to adopt.
Mm-hmm.
Or well, I guess it's like a range of solutions.
Where-
But
where did they get it to, and to where they're talking about
Right
what they're
there.
gonna do?
Yeah, right there is
Yeah.
right.
So the House of Representatives recognizes that a new national, social, industrial, and economic mobilization on a scale not seen since World War II and the New Deal era is a historic opportunity to create millions of jobs, provide unprecedented level of prosperity and economic security for all people, and to counteract systemic injustices. They define that earlier up there, and they say racial injustice, all these other things are real, and we're just going to all call it systemic injustices, which is a bit of a. I mean, I kind of see that.
And you're going
but
to counteract that with climate change
stuff, yeah.
results.
Yeah,
too?
it is
It's
the sense-
somehow this is
intersectionality.
all
Yeah.
this
It's
is
the
all
word
connected.
this is
Yeah.
this is the word. It is the duty of the federal government to create a Green New Deal to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions through a fair and just transition for all communities and workers. All
Net zero greenhouse
Net
gas emissions.
zero.
all
zero.
Yeah, and then all
For
to
all.
communities and workers.
And like I said, the video that I'm gonna pull up of the guy counteracting this, like he will tell you that is physically impossible.
Well, you know what? No, I mean, I felt this. Like, I've never actually read one of these things. I don't know if they're all like this or what. But from the jump, I was like, dang, this feels like a project proposal. Like this isn't anything. Dude, I read a lot of books where it's like FBI guys, right? And you hear the FBI guys talking about how you always have to pitch to get your operation funded.
Right.
Like
You have to convince them that this is going to be a big enough bust.
Right. That this is the one that we need to be focused on.
Yeah.
I was like, this feels like me writing my resume. Like I helped support $20 million worth of transactions, and I didn't do shit. All right, I sat around, but people, the organization around me did all. But you see what I'm saying? Like,
It's when you wrote my awards. You were like, Specialist Allen has contributed to 14,000 combat flight or something.
Yeah, some shit.
Yeah,
like
whatever
that.
the number
Which is-
was for
which is
all of our.
technically
Yeah,
True.
It
That's not
is.
a lie.
I support it.
It is.
I
And
watched that radio a couple
technically
times.
What this thing is stating isn't a lie. I mean, the report did say those things, and then the models projected these other things.
Yeah, but then even in your solutions, though, then it's like, too, when you ask, like, what kind of employee would you be? I'd be the best goddamn employee, man. I'm going to save you millions.
This is
I'm
basically-
talking, how good you going to be? Net zero good.
This
you ain't
is
going to have
the
one
equivalent- yeah,
fucking liability.
This
on
is the equivalent of when they ask you, so tell me, what is your biggest weakness, would you say is your biggest weakness? And you just tell them flat out,
How much people
don't
like
got
me.
one.
How much people like me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? People just love the shit out of me, and sometimes they just go broke buying me gifts
Yep.
because I'm just so goddamn
I'm
good.
just so
My
good at what
biggest
I do.
weakness is
My last job, I actually had
care
to
too
leave because the
much.
company bankrupted itself paying my salary.
Yep. What they did is they continued to give me raises.
Yeah.
They just kept giving me raises until they literally couldn't afford to pay anybody
That
else.
is the weakness on the company's part, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what all this sounds like. It sounds like a bunch of fluffity puff of like we're gonna fucking
Yeah, so, I
correct
mean, you-
this 100%.
You get the
Ooh,
idea.
that right
We've-
there, right? Oof.
What?
All this right here.
Yeah,
This
it's
one?
about
You
the
like this one?
projects and strategies.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
This is very important. Like when we get out of the weeds of it for a second and we get to the higher level of it, I'm all for solutions. It's something Mac talks about a lot. I think about a lot too. But a solution is only as efficient or efficacious. What's the word?
The efficacy of the solution.
is only in its implementation. See, I'm writing bills right now.
You're right. Just the green.
No, but really
the
though,
newer deal.
it only works depending on how you work it. So it's like we can have all these great strategies, but all these great desires to get shit down to net zero, to
Create
revitalize,
millions of jobs.
We always want to create millions of jobs
Because
so
we're
it's
gonna
not
lose.
this
I feel like
isn't
we're
a
gonna
goal
lose
all
millions of
the time.
jobs, like all these gas jobs,
Oh, no.
all this fracking, all of this
Things are
coal.
gonna have to-
It'll
all
be
that's
much
gonna
more
have.
than millions.
Well, maybe. I mean, yes. But that's the thing about it too, and I think in the sense of they want to upgrade. You know, you want to make so you don't lose the jobs. You say you turn them. They turn them into different jobs,
right?
You know, so I think, like you said, I mean, maybe more people will lose because there's a lot of old going on right now. You know, and then you have to update that and whatever. And
it'd be better if they waited just like a hot minute. You know, just let all these boomers die out, and then that way all those jobs will be empty, and they'll need to hire people. But then we can just shift the younger people into the new jobs, instead of replacing the old people that just died in the old jobs.
Let them have their jobs all the way till they die.
Exactly. Just let the whole.
But in the
we'll
meantime,
just let the whole fossil
course,
industry just die away.
We can't though. We're addicted to fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Our entire military runs on fossil fuels. Our whole transportation system.
It's the whole world.
Runs,
the whole world runs on fossil fuels.
Yeah, and like to break that addiction.
The only countries that don't are ones that are poor. Because they don't have anything to run them.
Well, to break that addiction, to somehow move to something more renewable or sustainable or whatever, is going to take massive loss of jobs and massive loss of industries. We might lose. We're going to lose entire industries to create new industries. So it's like,
it's a tough transition.
Yeah, it's a tough transition. I don't want the government being the one at the guillotine pulling the fucking rope and being like, BP, gone, you're gone. Because once the government has that power, then what if later on in the cycle, when that's the precedence, they just have another kind of dictator-esque president who comes in, chops the head off governments that are against his private businesses that he's secretly running. You know, like it gets, once you give government that amount of power, then
listen, Africa, you're gonna take these goddamn solar panels if I have to shove them down your fucking throat.
Yeah, exactly. You're buying Trump solar panels. But what I'm getting to is like, I don't want our government being the one that controls the private market. I think that is dangerous. That's communism to an extreme. Now, do I want social programs or government subsidies to like help transition? Probably, because it seems we got to transit. I mean, do we agree that we have to kind of break the addiction to fossil fuels as a society, as a cultural everything?
I was gonna make the analogy that it's like sugar in our individual diets now, right? Like it's something that we found that helped us or that we liked, you know what I mean? That you get your car around, it does all this cool shit, you know, and
it lets you fly jet planes,
right? You know, so you saw the efficacy of it, and you were like, this is awesome, but then you take it too far, and you put that shit in everything, you know. Now it's like everything got to have a jetpack on it, you know, and everything got to use this type of, like you said, don't nobody want to ride a bike no more now because there's cars. It's like, it's cool. The bike was still a very, you know, useful mode of transportation.
Ain't no horse and carriages.
You know, it's not fucking,
there.
you know, exactly. So, you know, I think we did become a little too dependent on it, and we gotta.
And it changes. It's a difference in the way that, and this is kind of what like I said, my whole thing's gonna be about it. I think it requires just a difference in the way that you think about it, because like I hear a lot of people talking about like planes. Like planes is a big one because it's one of the, like, cars are now becoming electrified, and I mean, like, they're still really expensive for like an average person, considering an average person makes not that much money. I mean, like, one Tesla would be like your entire year's salary for like an average American. For now, yeah. But I mean, so it's coming, but like we're nowhere near that with a plane. Like nobody's come close to, I mean, at least that I've heard of electrifying a plane and having it ready for commercial use or anything like that. So I hear a lot of people talk about like planes, but when you actually look at the numbers, planes only contribute, I think it's like 3% to our entire emissions globally, like planes. And so like you get a lot of good shit done because of planes. Like I think you mentioned bicycles, and I was thinking when I heard that statistic, I was like, man, can you imagine if everybody, instead of like trying to derail planes and do more trains, because I hear like more trains, less planes, instead, if everybody decided to ride a bike to everywhere that was within 3 miles of your house, you would drastically reduce emissions way more, and you really wouldn't fuck up your productivity that much, because some planes are very important for the productivity.
Some really big countries push that. Germany pushes that, I know.
The trains over planes?
Well, no, the people riding bikes
Oh,
everywhere.
people riding bikes,
It's like super prevalent in a lot of European countries. The EU really pushes policies
but they
about
are really
stuff like
tight,
that.
too. Like, they're like...
True.
They are. They're a little bit... Yeah, they have some government overreach.
Well, no, I mean, like,
he's saying that it's much
geographically
easier to get around because it's not so big.
That's true.
Yeah.
America's
like
much more spread out.
Yeah, one country in the EU. Like the EU, it's better to compare that's why we compare the EU, all of Europe, to the United States, because it's more
as opposed
comparable.
to individual countries. Yeah.
Right, because it's like they are one, like, we are one country, but comparably, we're much more similar if we compare all of them together because they're like states, you know, they're just not as evenly distributed.
A lot of people don't want to, you know, move around the bigger cities on foot or by bike because of just perceived fear and danger. You know, I would always have thought that. Like, if you grabbed me a year and a half ago and said, John, you're going to be riding around downtown LA during the height of rush hour on a bicycle wearing a pink flamingo shirt, I would have been like, I'm going to get mugged, attacked, I'm going to get murdered. You know, like, how could, you know, you're
so vulnerable.
I'm so vulnerable. I'm on a bicycle and like, but doing it and actually physically riding a bike within 3 miles to like this little area that I was working at, I felt perfectly safe.
Yeah.
I felt in complete control.
And it's so funny that you mentioned that because LA is not a bike-friendly city.
It doesn't
like
feel
overall,
super bike-friendly.
It's not. And there are cities across the country that are very bike-friendly. Austin, where I used to bike, extremely bike-friendly. There were bike lanes on like 75% of the roads that I rode on Austin.
But I haven't thought about how it does my part for climate change. I've never thought about that. You know, I did it out of necessity. I didn't want to walk. I just wanted to ride a bike instead.
It's a little bit faster, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit faster. And I don't know, man. Like, I don't feel like it's an excuse you can use. Like, if you wanted to say, oh, I could never ride a bike around within 3 miles to help cut down on climate change because of all the homeless, or I could get attacked, or it's bullshit, man. You have just as much chance of getting into a wreck and dying as you do a homeless man attacking you with a knife or something. Like, those fears
I would actually
I
say
think cars are the most
statistically,
dangerous thing
I would actually say that you're far more, like, even if you're going to take out like the accident, even if you take out car accidents, I'd say that more people get mugged in cars than do bikes. Like, you have a better chance of somebody trying to steal your car from you while you're moving than you do your bicycle. I would be very interested to see that.
Gotta look it up.
Carjacking.
Yeah, I'm just making that up. I don't know. I'm conjecturing there.
I feel you.
But like, if I was gonna mug somebody, I want to mug. Like, if I was gonna mug you, I'd just take your goddamn car. Like, I'd carjack you.
You got to put like statistics and USA probably.
That's true. Like,
there was an estimated 721,000 motor
This is
vehicle
per 100,000.
Yeah, but thefts, that could just mean when it's like parked.
That one is.
This is total. So this is in 2012. Okay. And then, so 720,000 as compared to a comparable year. It's so hard to tell.
Keep going down. 2016. No, that's just percentages.
By stolen ride.
And this is in England?
Yeah, it's true. And, you know, this is probably counting all the bikes that just get stole out of your front yard or something.
Well, that's what
like
the
that.
other one was counting. It was just counting stolen cars.
Oh, period.
So, it's not even carjackings. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean,
I didn't see.
I've never heard of anybody being bike jacked. Like,
there was
while they're riding it.
estimated 1.3 million incidences of theft.
But that's from all
just
in 17 countries.
Yeah, 17 countries. That's true.
Yeah. We'd have to do a much more in-depth analysis
to get
of
some
the statistics to find out. But I mean,
but
you get what I'm trying to say.
I do get what you're saying.
And but if we do add in accidents, then yes, you're far more likely to be injured. And now, of course, that's mostly because most people ride cars, so that skews the statistics a little bit.
Sure.
But I mean, really, I was just making the point that there are safer places to ride a bike than LA.
Yeah,
and you feel perfectly safe.
And I was talking about rational and irrational fears.
Exactly.
Like, no one a lot of people don't have that fear of when they get in their car they're going to get into an accident. So why would you have the fear that if you take a bike 3 miles down to the Walgreens and back that you're going to get bike jacked or murdered?
Yeah.
Like, just we need to assess our risk better.
So I agree. I want to curtail this conversation a little bit in the sense of that, because we're getting into the little bit of like the individual nuances of it too.
It's true.
But I agree with that in the sense of like, I think that that's what they're trying to do here with the Green New Deal and like the government solution, because it kind of in the way we were just talking about, like, you're going to lose a lot of old things to update to new things. You know, that happens in everything. And so that'll happen on a governmental scale. But I think just trying to start to gear our minds towards the idea of updating shit, I think is such a good idea to me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't know the weeds of it. Like, I get it's going to cost money. I get that it's a painful process, you know.
Yeah.
But in the end, like, when I do look at, obviously the United States has got great infrastructure. I'm not saying it's bad, but for our level of wealth and all these things, like, we could constantly be innovating that. And I don't really see that on the same side as we're innovating like our weapons, you
Yeah.
know, like what kind of
Facts.
how good our guns are.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
We got the best goddamn guns.
but then not really that good at energy. It's like I feel like we could work those things, and so it's like this, but it happens on the individual level. So that like this, the Green New Deal sounds like a motivational poster to me, if I'm just being honest, right? It's like nothing real concrete. I don't know. I didn't read the
We'll have the link to it
implementation.
so that
Yeah,
you guys
and I
can
would
read
encourage
it. If
you
you want to
guys
read the whole thing, like we said, the one that we have is 14 pages.
Yeah.
That seems very short to me, but it might be the whole thing. But we'll have that.
We also want to show the objections to it. And
That's
the other,
true.
the
Yeah,
other view.
if you want to, yeah, we can go into the video of the guy and his kind of objections. And like I said, he has more statistical, like he did a whole statistical breakdown and he exposes some of the numbers in there.
But based on these like real fluff language of like,
Right,
we're
of
gonna
the bills.
upgrade
Exactly.
every building in the country. It's
Exactly.
like, you know,
they
these are
literally say that.
these
they
are,
literally say that.
for lack of a better term, this is wishful thinking, right? Like this is like your ideal situation.
This
But-
would, yeah, I mean, like, this is a very, like, if we're talking, like, negotiation tactics, which is something that you and I have studied a lot, this is actually what's referred to as a hard anchor.
Yeah, sure.
Right, like, so if you're trying to get policy done that's in a green policy put in place, then you ask for the moon and you land among the stars. You know?
and
Same
you
with,
realize
like,
that they're going to detract this.
They're going to
and-
detract, yeah, like as it goes through this processes of being voted on and signed in, they're going to retract stuff and change stuff. So you want to start as hardcore as you could. So, I mean, if that's the case, then I can see them making that argument.
Yeah,
but
think about that in the
that's
sense of
that's like the hardest thing.
it's like the war on drugs or the war on terror or
right.
all these other things.
Agreed.
They want to
They
stomp out
stamp it
these
out
things that
completely.
like if you said I want to end homelessness, zero homeless. The idea is you're going to pour billions of dollars and get tons of homeless
Yep.
off the streets, but you
Yep.
can never defeat someone being at the lowest point
Yeah.
in their life and decide to
Right.
crawl under a bush and inject heroin.
Terrorism.
all you can do,
Like you said, you
all you
can't
can do is
stamp
spend the
out
money to come
terrorism.
and scoop them up.
Yeah, and you can try your best to get them
You
off the
try-
street and stuff, but there's going to be some homeless.
And that's what I say. It's like, to me, this more signifies a change in thinking of like,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to accelerate our efforts in this direction. And I think that that's such a powerful thing on a governmental scale, but on an individual scale too. Because I noticed as we were talking, I was like, okay, we're talking about bikes. You know, it's like a very new. I mean, it's one thing you can do, and it's not gonna make that big a difference. I mean, you know, whether John Allen, takes a car or a bike, isn't really doing that much to the climate. You know, but it's these little decisions multiplied across ourselves, right? So
300
it's
million people.
all these different
Yeah.
decisions. Like, I'll just use this thing and throw it away. I'll just take this plane that I could easily do whatever, XYZ. I'll drive. But we added up accumulative on ourselves and then accumulatively across the entire country, and then that creates this.
And it adds up.
It adds up. And so I think that's the same thing too, is like we want to shift because it's not about like, I don't think that if you want to help the environment, you just getting on a bicycle is really, you know what I mean?
It's not the only answer.
It's not the
Yeah.
answer. It's not like, oh, I just need to ditch my car and get a bike, and then now I'm being like a green guy. It's like,
Yeah.
but you shifting your mindset towards that, it really does.
It gets
a
you to ask
lot.
questions.
Like,
Like,
you start
when you-
thinking about it tremendously.
Yeah, like instead of reaching into the cooler and grabbing another Dasani bottled water,
Right.
maybe you just say to yourself, well, I mean, I must have bought 100 of these over my life. Maybe I'll just spend the $30 and get a water bottle.
right?
Yep.
And then I can just fill it up at my house or whatever, you know.
And then-
Reusing materials and fabrics is a big one too. They talk about how the fashion industry.
the fashion industry is the third largest polluter in the entire world.
So the idea of like, I bought this shirt at Goodwill. I really like this shirt. I didn't go pay brand new for the shirt, get printed from China and sent over
Right,
here with
true.
all the new dyes and everything. Like these
Yeah.
are all, it was done. So I'm trying to reuse it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that feeling.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
And like
I've
you said,
really
it's
gotten
not
to-
about trying to be like perfect. Like if you really wanted to, you could go like live in the woods and like have a compost toilet and do
Yeah.
all like, you know,
Shit in a bucket.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Like you do you like? But I think that the point is that, like you said, it's just about a mindset shift.
I think so.
It's just about a mindset shift.
Because that seems what they're trying to do in the government. Because
I feel like we're kind of like at the point where people will start, like we're starting to realize that, but I do think that there's like a correlation between like how wealthy you are and how much you can care about the climate. And we see that. I mean, like the worst producers all around the world, climate, you know, emissions producers, polluters, poor countries. Developing countries are the worst producers because they have to use the most fossil fuels and they have no renewable technology. And like for us to come behind, like for us to spend the last 100 years becoming extremely rich off fossil fuels and then realizing the negative effects and then turning around and telling people like China and like India, you can't use these fossil fuels because they're so bad for the environment. And I feel like rightly China and India is like, whoa, bro, like we don't really feel like you can tell us anything like that. Like how is you and Europe are over there just pumping it out for the last 100 years, get hella rich, and then turn around and be like,
Yeah.
Wait a
point your
second,
finger
China,
at
yeah,
me,
yeah.
wag our finger,
Well,
like
we
wag your
often
finger
do
at
that
them.
dad shit where it's like we know best now.
Yeah,
because
well, we
learned,
fucked it up,
yeah.
so we're trying to save you.
Which
from
is cool
yourself,
to
and
make
it's like-
the advice, but like you said, I don't like the idea of you like trying to push other people away.
Also, at what point did we decide like, oh, that's too much, China?
Exactly.
Oh, India, you're getting a little too polluted.
Yeah,
Yep,
right.
You know,
doing
like
too
it
much
took
pollution.
it took years and decades for them to build up these systems and these factories and
Yep.
this coal industry and build all these plants and things like
Exactly.
that. And then when they start churning up all this pollution and we start seeing China with a haze over it, then we're like, oh shit, like, hey China, well, tone it down a notch.
Yeah, you guys are getting kinda wild over there.
Maybe move into these renewable energies.
But I mean, geez, like it's like everybody else. Like it's like you looking at your friend, like, man, you're really getting out of shape over there, buddy. You're really slacking on your diet. It's like, so are you, my dude. Like, so are you.
Yeah,
Like, what
well,
the
yeah.
fuck are you talking
Like
about?
you're
What the-
eating, like that's
What?
like if
Just
I
a
was
fat
eating
American.
like a big ass piece of cake right now, and I'm like, bro, you're getting fat.
Getting kind of fat over there. You know,
Just
it's
big
like,
pot belly,
what the fuck?
big old belly hanging on the table. You getting fat.
But
Well, no,
it's
you
a-
know what it is? It's like as if no, it's actually like this. It's like we're eating cake every week with you, and then today we showed up. We were like, nah, I'm trying to lose weight.
You should.
You're looking pretty fat yourself,
Yeah,
Doug. I
you
mean, you're
should
starting to
get
put
on-
on some weight, and
You
it's
should
like,
go with that. Yeah.
like, bro,
But
like,
I
what are
think
you
you
talking
were
about?
hitting on something really heavy when you said that, though, too, about the fact that you have to be that's the qualifying statement I said. I was like, of a country of our wealth and stature, we should be focused on energy. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right,
that-
we
like-
have the
like-
capacity
right,
to
like,
make serious
we
headway on that.
Got we're the ones that you said led everybody this way. You know, so if it's like we're the ones that really kind of pioneered the idea of just running it up on the fossil fuel game, I definitely think with that wealth that we accumulated from that,
Yeah.
we could pioneer the way forward in the sense of not just, hey, you need to, but show people how.
Developing
And I
new
would like to
technologies.
remind people-
Technologies.
Developing new
I
technologies.
would
That's
like
huge.
to remind
we need to
people-
talk about that.
Oh
Technology
yeah, there's a
is-
very severe
so-
lack of research and development in new technologies.
That's what's gonna save us.
But I would like to remind people that, like, you know, the listeners and everybody, it's just that like fossil fuels, like gas and like natural gas is like the new one, and then you have oil and then coal before that. But like, don't forget, like, we were burning oil before natural gas, and we were burning lots of coal before that, and before that we were literally almost hunted whales to extinction because their whale oil was better burning than whatever oil we were using before that to light our houses. So like, we're just looking for the most efficient way to get the things
Agreed.
that we want done. And so I think that that's where the research comes into, is like, if you can make solar more efficient than fossil fuels, literally everybody will do it. Everybody will do it because it will be cheaper. China will do it. India will do it.
This
They
is
will
a
all
great
do it
point.
because it's cheaper. If it's the cheapest way to get energy, then they'll do it because they don't give a fuck about your environment. They care about their wallets.
Yeah.
Synthesizing things is also a way to. So there's this great example if you want to type something in about this. This is like, so guano, bird poop, used to be the best fertilizer.
Oh yeah.
So we, as a nation of Americans, said, okay, American citizens, if you go out and you find one of these tiny little island rocks covered in guano, eminent domain, manifest destiny, take that shit. We'll call it American because we want that guano.
Yeah.
And
It's
we will
the
send our boats out there.
The Guano Islands Act, the GIA.
It's a United
Send in
States
the
federal law
In
passed by the Congress
1856.
of the United States to take possession in the name of the United States of unclaimed islands containing guano deposits.
Now, until we could synthesize fertilizer, guano was the way that we were like really turbo boosting agriculture and trying to keep up with population growth and things like that. Like, guano was the best fertilizer. So all of this energy went out into trying to find these tiny islands.
1840s, man. Crazy.
All of this energy went out to try to find these islands. We're talking full ships, cargoes of people to go
Oh,
and
yeah.
search.
I mean,
all this waste.
It's the newest government contract.
Yeah,
to go out
exactly.
there and find an island.
Once
yeah.
they figure out how to synthesize it, all that entire industry is gone.
Yeah.
No, but I think what you're failing to realize, though, is that the only reason that they must have done this for so long until the newest form of fertilizer was because it was the best fertilizer, and that the gains they were getting from how good the fertilizer was counteracted even the immense amount of energy they
But
had to
that's
put
what
into
he's
putting
saying.
it.
Synthesize fertilizer, and you wipe out all that
Yeah.
effort.
It's
all
like
that
the
oil.
new
It's like-
technology
yeah, it's
comes
like
through, and
our
then it's like,
addiction
well,
to
that
guano.
doesn't mean anything anymore. So
Yes.
let's just do all
It's
of
an
this.
alternative source. So if you have guano, aka oil, and you're going all the way over to the Middle East to get it and making millions of barges, and all these things are happening in war and terror because of this, and then you say, wait a second, we found a way to synthesize this, or we found this other renewable energy source that's better that we can use in our vehicles and adapt.
Not
just
only
like
is it better,
guano
but
and
it's cheaper.
fertilizer. Yeah. Then you eradicate an entire
Do you
industry.
not feel like that's already happened though? Like with nuclear energy and wind energy.
Nuclear
and solar
energy could do
and
that,
all these
but
things.
people are very afraid of it.
Well, that's my point.
we still have coal plants going in North Carolina.
I feel like the people who are afraid of it are the people who own the coal plants. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Probably.
I feel like because like
I mean,
said,
horse people were very, like, people that own stables. They were very worried when Henry Ford put out the Model T. They were
The
like,
hitching
"This
post
is not
industry?
good. This is not good.
This is not a good thing.
the shit
They thought it was
sweepers
the
on
worst.
the street, they thought it was the worst.
Yeah,
'Cause then there's
the
their
car
job,
people.
their
I mean,
job's
the
going.
horse people were the most environmentally friendly people. They were like, "These cars are fucking terrible for the environment. You want a good horse?"
Yeah,
The
for
hitch
real.
post people were like, we just have to cut down a tree to make these hitching posts. And the guys that are making like the
They literally have to
transmissions are
dig
like-
into the ground.
The transmission guys are like, yeah, but we got this iron ore.
Yeah, we got this new shit coming.
We got this new shit called steel.
It's great. It's
I
heavy.
love what you're hitting on now too, because for me too, when I look at this type of shit, I don't think it's just pollution. That's what everybody thinks of it as. It's like, oh, it's pollution and it's waste, right? It's like pollution, but it's that level of pollution comes from your level of consumption.
Right.
Like you said, I think what we're talking about is the overpopulation guy was the first guy.
Okay,
to be
well here,
starting to
let's go
spew
into.
this
I
information.
can't remember which video they mentioned the guy's name in. This is the first one. I don't think it's him. It's like, it's something with an E. I can't remember.
No.
But this is the guy that was talking. He breaks down the numbers about the Green New Deal and like how, in his own words, Looney Tunes.
Oh, he thinks
It really is.
it's
Yeah,
a mockery.
exactly.
Now, the formal title of my speech this evening is "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Global Warming." But actually, 3 funny things have happened on the way to global warming. 3 of them. First, the warming stopped.
Oh, real quick.
Imagine.
I do need to say that this is an older video. This video is from 2014. I just want to let everybody know that.
Okay.
My JRE video, which is going to be Randall, Carlson, and Graham Hancock, is also 2015. So some of our information might be a little quote-unquote dated, but we're just trying to look at good information.
Yeah.
In that. Second, the policy agenda of the climatistas, as I call them, or an even better term for the climate crusaders is Thermageddonites. But the policy agenda of the climatistas has been revealed to be completely absurd. And I'll walk you through that here in a moment. The third funny thing that has happened is something that no one predicted. There's been some talk about it today at lunch and other presentations, and that's the revival of the oil and gas energy sector through the technological revolution of directional drilling and rock massaging. That's what I call fracking, rock massaging. No one saw this coming. As recently as 10 years ago, all the official forecasts, including of a lot of the energy companies, ExxonMobil's annual forecast, British Petroleum, they all predicted continuing declines in oil and gas production in the United States. And by the year 2020, not far off from now, the United States was predicted to be importing 20% of its natural gas from guess who?
So just real quick,
The result of the
I've
latest
already looked
catalog
both
of
of those
exaggerated
numbers up,
claims and appalling
and we are not
cliches,
only the leading
is,
producer
endless.
of
The most
oil,
egregious
but
one
we
is
are
one
also
that
the
I'm
leading
sure many
producer of
you have
natural
heard
gas
seen
in
on
2020.
TV. It's the
And they
ubiquitous
predicted that it
refrain
would be
that
they predicted that we would be
97%
producing,
of
like-
all scientists
like
believe in climate change. By the way, they even use that word believe like it's an
Probably not a
article of
good thing,
religious
though.
faith, which I think is also a
It just
curious
depends
thing.
on how you look at it, but I'm just saying.
And it's not
they
just
get the
climate
shit wrong.
advocates. NASA, a federal government agency, says they have a web page that says that phrase, 97% of scientists believe in climate change. That's our government speaking now. And of course, the political suggestion behind this is if 97% of scientists believe in climate change, then therefore they must all agree with the environmentalist agenda to suppress energy. So where did this 97% figure come
I don't
from?
know who's running this beef
When you
here,
explore
but
its
they
lineage,
pick out
it turns out to
gold.
be about as convincing as a Chicago election. The no, you can't believe that, right? The most prominent form of it comes from a paper by a professor in Australia named John Cook at the University of Queensland. And he published this paper in an obscure journal, and it's just rocketed around and become the big thing. And what this study purported to do was review the abstracts of 11,000 climate science articles. Now just stop right there. Important they say abstracts. No one's going to read 11,000 climate articles. Even a whole team of graduate students is not going to read through 11,000 science articles. So they read the abstracts. Fair enough. The abstract is always that one paragraph summary at the head of any academic journal article. Well, here's the abstract to the Cook paper, which no one in the media seems to have the wit to read for themselves. First sentence. We find that 66.4% of abstracts expressed no position on anthropogenic global warming, comma. Let's stop right there. 2/3, 66%, 2/3 of the papers express no opinion on human-caused global warming. Let's keep going. 32.6% endorsed anthropogenic global warming. 0.7% rejected it, and 0.3% were uncertain. Okay. So that means 1/3 of those papers had an opinion on human-caused global warming. So the next sentence says this. Among abstracts expressing a position on human-caused global warming, 97.1% endorsed the consensus positions that humans are causing the warming.
That's where the 97 comes from. 97%
Somehow this has become 97% of all
had an opinion, agreed with the endorsement of anthropogenic. So he says
all scientists when it's 97% of 1/3 of scientists. Or you might put it this way, you could just as easily say 66% of scientists publishing in the field have expressed no firm opinion on the matter. Or still another way to think about it is, this is the grandfather of all simple-minded tautologies. Among all the scientists who agree with the consensus are all the scientists who agree with the consensus. That would be an adequate way of saying it. Now, initially, Professor Cook refused to share the data with anybody else to review how they've been coded and whether they matched up. That's always a bad sign right there, isn't it? But of course, in the modern world, with things planted on internet databases, somebody found the data. And lo and behold, some of the articles turned out to be not really about climate science at all. One article that was billed as a science article was about U.S. media coverage of climate change issues. Strangely, in those 11,000 papers was not a single one from Richard Lindzen of MIT, he's the most prominent skeptic in the climate science community, who has been publishing on the subject since 1961. None of his papers were included somehow. That leads me to the second funny thing that happened on the way to global warming. And that's the still incomplete realization of the sheer absurdity of the climate policy agenda. Now, global warming was always the dream issue for environmentalists because it gave them license to commandeer the entire energy sector of the entire world. And as energy is the master resource that enables all other resource use, it's, I would say, the platform for material human progress itself. Getting control of energy is the commanding height of human civilization. But what they have proposed is a transformation of the world's energy system so sweeping and so unrealistic that it would make King Canute blush with embarrassment. And here I'm going to have to walk you through a few numbers. I tend not to like to try and do numbers in a talk like this because it can be hard to follow. I didn't want to do PowerPoint for the same reason as Ken, because numbers on a screen are even worse in some ways because you can't see them. And so I'm going to try and stick with me on this, and I'll make this as straightforward and comprehensible as possible. But you begin with this. The target of climate policy orthodoxy is an 80% reduction, 80% reduction in carbon dioxide emissions worldwide, not just the United States, worldwide, by the year 2050. 80% reduction by 2050. I call it for shorthand the 80 by 50 target. Now, no one actually knew what this meant in practice till I and a few other people got after it. And, you know, you throw out these large, 80% of something and, 6 billion tons of emissions. What does this all mean? It's hard to know when you're throwing around these my eyes glaze over numbers, right? Well, here's how this works, and I'll translate this into real terms for you. The big round number you start with is that, it's changed a little bit, but this is good enough for our purposes here. The figure that the Department of Energy starts with from a few years ago is the U.S., we'll just use the U.S. for now. U.S. emitted about 6 billion tons a year of carbon dioxide. That's about 20 tons per capita, 20 tons for each of us. Now, 20 tons sounds like a lot. One little fact that's fun is each one of us individually exhales about 800 pounds a year of carbon dioxide just from breathing. So you can see your nice down payment on the way to your 20 tons just from breathing in and out. So that's not really that much if you think about it then, 20 tons. Now, an 80% reduction, it's actually 83% in the Waxman-Markey bill, but don't worry about that. It takes us down to about 1.1 billion tons. Or if you want to just keep it simple, we're going from 6 billion roughly in round numbers to about 1 billion. Now, the first threshold question I got curious about was, when was the last time the United States carbon dioxide emissions were that low? You can figure this out. It takes a little bit of work. It's not that hard. You've got to go through the historical data tables that are available. And the answer you come to is that the U.S. last emitted 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide around 1910, maybe 1905. That's another calculation someone else did that's pretty good. In 1910, the U.S. had only 92 million people. And if you do the math, that meant we had about 10 tons per capita emissions, so about half of the level we are today with 92 million people.
100 years ago, there was only 70.
However, in the year 2050,
we've
the Census
gone up,
Bureau is
exploded.
right. We're going to have about 420
But did you hear what he
million
said
people
though?
in this country.
Back then, it was 10.
What that means is
10
if we're going to have to
tons
stay
per capita. So it was about
under
half
1 billion tons of
what
total
we do
emissions
now,
for the whole country.
But there was only 92 million
Each one of
people
us will
back then.
have to lower our per capita emissions to 2.5 tons a person. That's 1/4 the amount our great-great-grandparents emitted 100 years ago. When, by the way, their incomes were, a fraction of what they are today. Didn't have air conditioning, didn't have flat screen TVs, didn't have a lot of refrigerators, didn't have many cars. You're starting to see where this is going. I did look up, when was the last time the U.S. was, I think, by the way, U.S. carbon dioxide emissions may have never been that low, even in the colonial era when we were only burning mostly wood and some whale oil. But from the data tables, I was able to figure out that the last time we were at 2.5 tons per capita of carbon dioxide emissions was 1875. There is a technical name for this kind of policy target. That name is Looney Tunes. If every single person in the country drove a Toyota Prius in 2050, we'd still overshoot the transportation sector emissions target by 40 to 50%. And I've left out airplanes, by the way. Airplanes are actually small of our total, but it's like 5% of our total fuel consumption is airplanes. No one's yet figured out how you're going to electrify an airplane. We may electrify cars someday, better than we're doing now. Teslas are kind of fun, but they're not very practical, nor are they affordable for an ordinary human being. So the clear implication of this target is that we have to replace the entire fossil fuel energy infrastructure over the next 3 decades. That's what they're telling us to do. And not just the United States, but for the whole world. Even if it could be done at all, and I think it can't, it would be a multi-trillion-dollar proposition.
Really segue into what I was going to talk about, but it's interesting.
What were you? Well, I mean, because like I said, he was just giving some counterpoints to what the Green New Deal was proposing.
But I just think he was shitting on the fact that we were talking about it's like it's a
unobtainable goal.
Right. It was a wild projection, but
yeah, I only like the video because of the numbers breakdown that he gave.
No,
which I was like, but I felt like it
because I definitely understood. I understand the consumption a lot better now.
Yeah,
like in the sense of seeing how we're consuming compared to like people 100 years ago were consuming, and like
that's good information.
Population change, like that was crazy. It was crazy insightful. I just like I said, then he went on like this whole tear down of the Green New Deal, which is everybody's doing, and I think that's because of that. Like you can exaggerate some, but what's a goal that you don't feel like you can accomplish at all? Like like that doesn't really inspire anybody to want to get behind it if it's just like he said, like how the fuck you expect to do that? It's like you're just
and when I think that's the thing is
magical,
like they're like if you're gonna use the government as like you said, I think that's what it is. Like if like that's what it sounds like the Green New Deal is. It's like you want it to promote this new idea, but if you use some sort of concept that's so outlandish to most people, then it's hard to get them behind the actual mindset shift that's really the whole point.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of what he was talking about. He was like, this is just like, you really just can't do this. And so it's like, to try to get us all behind this idea of like doing this, like we're all going to put our effort into this. And it's like, well, this is like, you might as well be telling us we're going to put our effort into levitation just via the mind or something like that.
This man
like,
also sounds, by presenting the 66% number first, that he's not necessarily someone who believes in climate change being done by humans. Or
no,
being
he's super
accelerated by
biased. I
humans.
don't think he even thinks that it's happening. I don't know his personal opinions.
So if
but
you
yeah.
say we have these lofty goals to achieve these standards, he's going to laugh at it because he doesn't even think you need to do anything.
Right. He's
thinks,
like, it's not even, it's a non-problem.
Exactly.
Right.
So,
which I'm not saying that I agree with. I just think that I like the numbers.
Yeah, but a lot of people who do believe in climate change, that's probably why they're trying to propose such a radical deal, because they do believe that it's, you got
well, that's
7
the
years
problem
and
is that right now, just like with
waxed.
any other political issue we have, the conversation is we need to do everything right now at the cost of trillions of dollars, or we don't need to do anything. You guys are crazy.
Yeah.
And
right?
it's like,
right?
well, no,
Where's
it's
the
probably,
nuance?
it's like there is something happening. Like the hurricanes are bad, you know, like whether or not there's more of them. Like, it's just so funny. People are like, well, there's not more than before, or there's less now than 100 years ago. It's like, but they're bad. Like, if we could do something to make them less bad, whether or not there's less of them or more of them, or if they're getting more intense or less intense, we can see it on the news. They're bad. If we can do something to make them less bad, that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
I think that really what I'd like to be is where this guy, my other guy, Bjorn Lomborg, is at, where he's like a cost benefit analysis economist. And he basically is saying, like, if we're going to spend $75 trillion on trying to fix things, he's like, let's just make sure that he's like, there's a lot of issues going on in the world. Global warming's one of them, or climate change, or whatever you want to call it. Like, that's one of them. But it's actually, there's a lot of areas in which we can do more good with that money for more people right now than doing all of the climate stuff. Because the only way that you can make the argument that we have to do everything about climate right now is that the world's going to end very soon.
Yeah, that.
Right.
drastic.
So, like, if it's not, and it's like because the way he puts it, which kind of sounds more correct to me based on the way it's playing out, it's more like a chronic issue. Like the same way that you would have like chronic back pain. Like, you don't want to bankrupt yourself if it's only hurting you a little bit throughout the day and you can still function and have a decently well life. You know, like if you got some rare thing that's going to take like research and development to cure, maybe you don't put all of your money into that because it's a small nuance. And so if we can recognize that maybe it is a small nuance, and I don't know that it is, I'm just saying if we can, then we can be like, okay, well, these are the ways that we can do the most good for that. Because he brings it up, like, we spend, I think it's like 90% of the EPA's, like, good results come from air pollution stuff that we do. But we spend like 30% of its budget on water pollution. And it's like, look, water pollution's good, but it's actually affecting way less people. And we can make way more headroad with air pollution. And so instead of spending 30% of this budget on water pollution, we can bring that more down to like a more manageable size and then start using that money to actually like boost the areas that we're good at instead of like
do something
funding money. But he also says that you have to do that in tandem with more research so that the things that we're bad at, we can become more efficient at. He's like, let's not waste resources using, I think basically what it is let's not waste resources using things that are inefficient because we want those things. Let's make those things more efficient and then put money into them. Like, you research, you develop, you get it good, and then you can start implementing it into people's homes and stuff like that. But you don't start just putting solar panels on there because you want them to do solar, even if it's actually less efficient and you have to spend more dollars per energy unit.
It seems to me that the heart of the issue is how drastic of a problem is this really.
Right.
Like, because if you do have hundreds of years to, undo it, then sure, take your time, right?
Right.
But then if it is really bad and it's about to pop off now, then you don't have the time to just, well, maybe we can do
really
other
good point.
things.
It's a really good point because later in this episode I'm going to bring in I think it's the Milankovitch cycles, which are, it describes how the Earth's going around the sun, but every 10,000, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it'll start getting more like elliptical, and then we don't have to go there now. We'll talk about it in the science part. Yeah. But we also have a wobble, and we also have and eccentricity, I think is one of the terms, but it explains how these things affect our climate and how during the Younger Dryas and all these other periods, you've seen temperature shifts based on these things, also asteroidal impacts. So climate is affected by tons of things, humans included, but tons of things. When we had megafauna roaming around, like 15,000 years ago, they were emitting carbon dioxide and emitting methane gas. They were eating plants and farting.
Man, I would
and
love
breathing.
to see the comparison of statistics between that. Like, if only we
We're
could
bringing
know.
that. We're going to go.
Oh, you have that?
Well, not.
I was talking about like if you could compare like
I have a graph.
the woolly mammoths versus the amount of cows now. I was just saying that'd be interesting.
Yeah, but the idea being that right now we're talking about kind of the anti-Green New Deal stuff and this idea that the economic impact is going to be far worse if we try to.
Right. Then, that's basically, and that's kind of what Bjorn says is like if we implement exactly what they're saying, we actually won't get as much good as we will hurt ourselves in doing these things.
It's like a cost-benefit analysis. Yeah.
Right. And that's like that's the whole way that he comes about it is like cost. Like I think he's an economist. He's like, does cost-benefit analysis. So.
Bjorn Lomborg, welcome.
Thank you, Peter.
Let's begin with the issue. You do all kinds of interesting work, and we'll come to some of the other work you do. But let's begin with the issue that first brought you to prominence and to which you still devote a lot of time, climate change. Here we have Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez speaking just a couple of weeks ago.
I think that the part of it that is generational is that...
Pause. Sorry, we just went way meta. We're referencing information in which he's referencing other information. We're 3 deep references right now.
We're 3 deep on the reference.
Not only that, but the
we're
third layer,
representing you this AOC.
The third
shit
layer
that
of the
you've never
representation
seen.
is something that we've already presented.
Millennials and people and Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up, and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? And like, this is the war. This is our World War II.
The world will end in 10 years, and this is the millennial generation's World War II, to which Bjorn Lomborg says,
well, it's first of all a wonderful encapsulation of how we really talk about global warming. There's a sense the world is going to come to an end very, very soon, and so we got to throw everything in the kitchen sink at this problem. Now, if that was really true, if the world was ending in 10 years, then of course we should throw everything at this problem. But that's not what the UN Climate Panel is telling us. Actually, the UN Climate Panel tells us global warming is an issue. Overall, and in the long run, this will be a significant problem for humanity. So a lot of climate economists have spent a long time. The Nobel Award was just awarded to William Nordhaus, the first climate economist ever to get the Nobel Prize. And he tells us, along with lots of other experts, that global warming by the end of the century will cost in the order of 2 to 4% of global GDP. So that means the sort of experience that you will have will be, on average, that you will be 2 to 4% less rich by the end of the century than you would otherwise be.
Not less rich than we are now.
No.
Less rich than we otherwise would have been. Yeah. And the projections are all for increasing standards.
Of course, yeah. So remember, we're talking we'll be 300 to 1,000% richer in 2100, and then we'll be 2 to 4% less rich.
So we might end up being 996% less rich.
Actually, you have to take it a little more, right, because it's the percent of that. But yes, it's a very small percentage of a much, much larger number. And that, of course, is why you need to recognize global warming is a problem, but it's just simply and by no means the end of the world. And now, if it's a problem, so that's what the UN Climate Panel very clearly tells us. It's a problem. If it's a problem, there are many problems.
They're admitting it's a. He's saying it's a problem.
We need to make sure that we fix
he
those
believes that
problems
it's also
in a way.
contributed to man, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
I think he does say that in the other video. But yeah, like he basically said exactly what I just said that he said, which is that he was like, look, it's a problem. It's just not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, and he's like just like stating that's what the UN climate people, which I mean, don't get me started on the UN. But I mean, he's just like, look, if we're really going to trust the government with it, the UN says it's not that big of a problem.
That's what I definitely think when we do a follow-up on, because I know we're going to get into science, too, about it and stuff. But, I mean, that's kind of maybe our own science. I don't know. We'll see. But I would love to go back and dive deeper into that and the idea of, like, is this really, like, what are these? Because it's obviously that these reports are being interpreted differently by different people. You know what I mean? Some people are like, yo, this is a really big thing. And you got other cats out here who all seem just as
You also have different
smart.
reports.
Different reports.
Yeah, the House of Representatives did a report, and they're going off of this report.
Yeah.
They're writing their whole thing off of this report, but then
it sounds like the UN's using a different report.
Yes.
Yeah,
I bet you Hoover Institute's got his own reports too. Like,
oh yeah,
whether or not we.
And again, yeah, I do want to point out that the last guy that we watched clearly, I mean, he was clearly obviously super biased against the climatistas and stuff like that.
Sure.
I mean, this guy seems like he's a little bit more of a rational thinker, but like, I mean, he's got his own biases and stuff like that. So I mean, yeah,
So
I mean,
does
the Hoover
AOC.
Institution
so
definitely
does
has a bias.
AOC.
Yeah,
So does the Sunrise movement.
Sunrise
We saw the
movement.
way they were looking at AOC. They were like,
I
"Mommy,
did a good thing."
Yeah, just
thank you for approval and significance in my life.
And that sucks though. It's because like she actually, I think she is like a really cool like role model for young people considering her
dope.
story.
She's
like
the
she came from
coolest
being like a
politician I've ever
bartender
seen.
and shit. Now she's a congressman, one of the youngest congresswomen ever.
She's like
you're the first conservative guy I've ever heard be like, you know,
Dude,
that
no,
AOC is a good person.
I feel
I'm
it,
proud."
though.
No,
Like,
because Bjorn also says this. Like I think maybe he says it in the next clip, which is from this video is from 2019. The next one's from a few months ago. But you know, like I believe that these are good people. You know, like I don't think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is like a
communist.
I mean, I feel like the communists probably thought that they were doing a good thing too. That's what I'm saying. Is like I don't really think there's a lot of evil people out here, and I definitely don't think AOC is one of them. She seems like a genuine person who just has different opinions.
I really like her too.
Yeah. She's hella funny.
She's what I always think of all my friends who are just back-armed sofa chairing this shit over here, you know what I mean? Like I get to hang out with a lot of people all the time who think they got all these opinions and ideas are good, and I'm like, go be AOC, fool. Like, what are you doing over here since you got such good ideas and shit? Like, get in the fight,
run for the house.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Get
probably
in there.
get elected.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? I just like that's one point. She seems like she would have been a bartender, and like that's who I would have been talking to her when she was a bartender, and I would be sitting here on
having
the
a
other
great
side
conversation
being
about
like,
climate change.
and I'd be like, you should go and fucking handle your business then, you know, quit bitching at me in the bar about it, you know. But anyways, she's a cool person. I think that too. But nonetheless, I don't necessarily know where she's at with this. Like, I feel like she's playing the political game a lot. Like, she's one of those people I don't see as like I said, when we watched that video where this all came from, it was like her coming into work, just like, what's up?
Yeah. Well, and that's
y'all are protesting. That's awesome.
Good for
This
you
is,
guys.
this is gonna help Nancy. This is pro Nancy, right?
Really good. And I think this. You know what? I think I'm gonna get behind this. This sounds like an interest. You know, it's like I don't seem like somebody. She doesn't seem like somebody to me who's like championing a lot of like things because she's well researched in them and like understands.
Yeah.
And
well,
stuff.
see,
She's
this
just
is the thing that gets me is like
politicize.
Don't act like they believe that the world's going to be ending in 12 years. Like she certainly does not act like the world is ending in 12 years. So how can I assume that she believes that, even if she says that? Like she says, but then her campaign's running around doing Ubers all over California, even though she's a congresswoman in New York.
What's the Uber got to do with anything? She got to get around.
I'm just saying, like, if you believed that the world was going to end and humanity itself was going to come to extinction,
seemed hyperbolic.
Would you be driving around in a car, which is one of the main reasons why that contribute to what she's talking about?
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Then I would argue that you don't actually believe that by your actions.
Dude, if they told you 12 years from now a meteor is going to hit this fucking earth, what would you do different today?
That would be different because if I was a space scientist, then I would try to figure out how to avert that.
So how would you expect her to act, though, given that she does believe in climate change? Like, what should she should just never leave the state of New York because she believes in climate change and she thinks that the Uber, like, people have been riding in this Uber for hundreds of years, and that's how we got here. And so her mission to try to stop all that, she should just stay at home locked inside because she believes it's a real thing.
Well, I mean, I just don't understand. Like, she wants us to live a certain way, but she's not willing to be the example. She's not living her life any differently than I am. But she's telling me that I should.
So she would have to admit fossil fuel consumption from her life completely before we would say her opinion is valid because she's not.
No, not that she doesn't have a valid opinion, but like all I'm saying is that I don't like the fact that she wants to circumvent the whole convincing of the idea. Like, at least in a free market, you have to convince people to invest in green energies and shit like that, which is why it's hard to get other countries to do it, considering it's not cost effective for them. But if it was, then they would, and you wouldn't have to convince them. They would choose to do it. And if it was for all of us more convenient or better for our lives to be more green, then we probably would be doing it. But at least right now, we all are like living our lives based on the cost benefit analysis that fossil fuels are working for us right now.
Which is fine that you think that. But like you said, you're passing this personal judgment on her because she's trying to proliferate a Green New Deal that somehow she should not use Uber because she's doing that. And I think that's weird, too, because I get that you don't want her to do it as a Green New Deal. You'd rather do it through corporation and like market, the free market, which is fine. That's another solution. But my point is, I don't think that that's. And this happens a lot in climate change, period, like the climate change conversation. And so that's why I'm saying, like, I was trying to say earlier, proliferate the idea that you riding the bike, it's not doing a lot, but it's doing something. And you making more of those little decisions in that way does something, you know? And so I don't want people do that. Well, if I can't do it all, then I shouldn't do anything, right? It's like she got to get around. She's trying to accomplish a mission. She's going to have to depend on fossil fuels. I don't think her doing, like, operating in a world the way it is and trying to change it is somehow endorsing the world the way it is and saying, like, you know, I want my cake and eat it too. I think she's very well to get into an electric car when they come about and stuff, you know? I don't know.
I believe it is a little hypocritical. I get that. I get that it's a little hypocritical
it has
to
nothing
spend
to do
money
with
on
the policy
Ubers.
itself. I mean, I'm just saying she's not a living example of what she wants everybody else to do.
But that was my other concept, though, is I also don't see AOC proliferating what you should do. She's trying to get a deal passed, which
She's
is
trying
totally
to get the
a
government
thing.
to
Like, you can
take money from these areas.
I never not once heard her sitting on the stage saying you need to use less fuel or you need to do that. She said we as a country need to enact policies that see this and this and this happen, which is well within a politician's
to get us
right
off
to
of the addiction to fossil
Yeah,
fuel.
but none of that stuff. I mean, all of that trickles down to us. Like, the policy doesn't achieve the things without individuals changing their behaviors, which is what the policy is designed to do.
You can be against the policy. I just don't see how you can judge AOC personally because you oppose the policy.
Because she wants to enact a policy that she is currently not living by, and she's saying that this is the way to save the world. That's what I'm saying. Like, if it's really to save the world.
I don't work out all the time. I work out sometimes. I don't work out all the time, but I think everybody should work out. I would propose a policy in which everybody else works out, but I don't necessarily work out all the times that I should. So
also, if she's looking at it, it might be like, okay, I have my entire staff here. We need to get to here. What is the?
You got to do something.
How do we get all these people here to here? Well, let's do a cost-benefit analysis. Maybe us all taking Uber carpools is the cheapest, lowest carbon footprint option that she has available to her. Rather than, or like if she said, "Oh, well, we'll rent a bus." Well, maybe that bus is going to be like a way bigger carbon footprint than just using these Ubers to get from here to here. You see what I'm saying? Like maybe
I see what
that's
you're saying.
the most carbon
the best way they could think of it.
Yeah, the best way they could think of at the time or within their resources.
I keep hearing
she's a congresswoman in New York City.
Right. Congress people work all over the place. I mean, like you said, they're lobbying and they're doing stuff. You can stand on your ground all day long.
I'm standing firm, dog. I don't fuck with anything she says.
Yeah, it's funny though. You're negating yourself like right here. You just said, "Yo, I fuck with AOC. She's a cool person."
As a person,
but
I don't like her political policies.
But then you just turned around and tried to judge her personally for her policies. You're trying to judge her personal life for her political policies.
That's what I'm saying. I think that consciously, she thinks that she believes that the world might end or whatever it is that she does believe, but she doesn't actually act that way. And so I'm saying, like, I think that she's coming from a good place, but she just doesn't really
hearing you say
understand
that
what she's talking
is like when kids in high school used to tell me I don't act black. I'm like, how is it that you would expect me to act? And that's why I keep asking you, what should AOC be doing to live in alignment with her idea of climate change?
Well, if she's going to be promoting the Green New Deal, then she should, I think that she should have net zero carbon emissions in her whole life, which I've already described, or the other guy described. You make 800 pounds of carbon dioxide just from breathing per year.
AOC,
so that's not possible.
No refrigerator, no laundry machine, no washer, no dryer.
Well, I've always said this, like, this isn't a new thing for me. I've always said, like, I think it's funny that people will tweet out about climate change. And I'm like, tweet out at people like, we all need to do more about climate change. And I'm like, where are you tweeting this from? You got a phone in your hand? You're talking to me about climate change?
Listen, AOC, if you're listen,
I don't know
AOC,
what you're talking about.
Like, you do this. Like, I literally
No,
watch
but
you
I don't
do
tell
this
people. I'm not trying to come to the government and use them to force people to change their behavior. If anything, I tell people.
But I see you proliferate things on social media that you do not necessarily and always live up to. Yes or no?
Oh, no, facts. Yeah.
So we all do that. We all proliferate an ideal that we ourselves hope to live up to too. So I mean, like I said, I don't think that AOC is trying to see everybody else's net zero go down, but secretly behind doors she's gonna be like, I still drive a fucking 1935 Ford T. You know, like
I know. I already stated that I don't think that that's what she's doing.
But you are kind of. I don't think we're gonna open a warehouse.
I stated
somewhere
already
and see
that I didn't do
AOC with a bunch of vintage muscle cars, like holding on to them, and be like,
no, I didn't think that
no
that's the case at
emissions
all.
for you guys, but I want to use them.
She's willing to do it if we're all gonna do it with her,
right?
But she's not willing to do it if it's only her.
For her
and
to get
I don't like that.
I think that she wants the technology, the money to be put into getting us to net zero. Whereas right now in her life, to be net zero, there's not the qualifying technology. Nope. Like she can't wash her clothes, have a bath
like saying
in
you
hot
want to go
water.
to the moon by yourself.
Yeah, but what she's saying is like, I want to push the technologies. I want to push the policies. I want to get to a point of zero net emissions by changing the way we look at it governmentally, changing. And I don't agree with the Green New Deal. Let's go ahead and say that right now. A lot of the socialist, a lot of the socialist and communist kind of slants to some of these ideas in the Green New Deal scare me. But I want to see advancement. I want to see net zero emissions. I want to see all these goals. I just don't know how to get there.
That's my whole thing is like, I just don't like that she's using the government to try to force me to do it.
Okay,
That's my whole point.
But the whole thing was about the Uber thing.
Keep
so,
like,
if she is using the current
she's
technology,
using my tax dollars to pay for Ubers that contribute to something that she thinks that is the end of the world.
And I'm also saying,
I don't agree with that.
And I'm saying she also uses hot water, has a washer and dryer, uses a refrigerator.
And I do all of those things too. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is like, even though you're pointing at the Uber, you could point at any of those things in her life and say she's not
allowed to have those.
She's not allowed to have those because
she's
proliferating this idea that
not that she's proliferating it. She could do it all she wants on social media. If she wants to start a nonprofit organization, however, whatever.
She could do it in any way that you approve of, just not in the way that she's doing.
Not with the government.
That's literally what I'm saying, that she can't tell me how to live my life. So yes,
I've never seen AOC tell you what to do with your life. I've never seen that.
She's promoting political policy that inherently can only be achieved
Every
by me changing my life.
Every politician ever has done that,
and that's why I don't fuck with them.
And still, but still, you operate in this world. Yes. Right? So with emissions or not emissions, you have a stance on it, but you'll operate in the world as is.
Yes.
Right. So I don't see you renounce all of civilization because you don't fuck with politicians.
But I also don't go to the government to tell them to make all of civilization to do the things that I think are right.
Right, but I just okay, fine.
Everybody gets to live their own way as long as you don't tell me how to live.
If that's what you're saying, then so you're saying that one of the prerequisites for doing political work is that you live to the ideals that you proliferate 100%. And if you do not do that, then you're not allowed to be a politician. Is what you're saying? For me, you can't make policy unless you live 100%.
No, I'm not saying that you can't. I'm not the person that makes politic rules. But I mean,
no,
if you're asking me
in Maxwell,
like I'm not gonna vote for somebody if I don't feel like they're aligned correctly with the shit that they're talking about. Like if I find out that you're actually doing all of the things that you want me to stop doing,
Ubers,
whatever. Yeah. Like
living your life.
If you are telling me to, I mean, like Ubers, like you said, I could be saying washing machines. If she was using my money to pay for her washing machine,
she is.
That's what I'm saying. That's fucked up. Well, I guess she is. Yeah, because she's paid by tax dollars. So I mean, really. You're right. I don't think that she should have washing machines either.
I'm just saying, like, she's working within the system. I give her the benefit of the doubt. I think you're taking it a little extreme, but I see your viewpoint.
Benefit of the doubt, and what's it like? Because
the benefit of the doubt that she's going to try her best to get to net zero in her life. She is going to, not just through Green New Deal policies,
but I don't even feel like she's trying.
I think she is. She's trying to pass. She's doing a lot more about it than you are, and that I am. Like she
wants all of us to do more about it collectively.
It's like when John asked me the other day about protests and if I thought that was I don't think so. But I see why people protest. Hell, it created the Green New Deal.
Yeah, but you can't go to the government and be like,
you can.
You have to make them protest with me.
Everybody's done it since the dawn of time. That's what government is. Like
I'm saying that I don't fuck with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I think that's a good
based on Ubers though.
But no,
Based
I
on
get
the
it.
fact that
my
we're
never going to get over that point.
We're not.
We're not.
I don't see what the Uber has anything to do with it.
We need to move on from the washing machines. The point is
it's my money.
But
I got it.
For the bigger conversation, though, the reason why I was digging deep on this is because that's the same conversation that happens to everybody when they try and do the right thing out here. It's like, well, you don't fully embody it, so we shouldn't listen to anything you say about it. And I think that that's weird because none of us fully embody our policies or our ideals. Like, nobody does that.
We try to.
We try to. And
I
we're
think
all
AOC's
failing
tried.
short. And so I would love to see that conversation switch because it's the same thing that he was just talking about. Or everybody. It's do everything or do nothing. There is no nuance. There is no sense of like, well, at least I'm proliferating this idea that might help us all through this bill, but I got to take Ubers to get there. And it's like, well, no, fuck your deal because you take Ubers. And the same thing. It's like if you're vegan or whatever and I see you eat meat one time, then I automatically try and discount all your veganism or like anything that you've
you
done.
Are no longer
vegan. Like, you know,
or if
but they do that to each other.
If you're anti-sugar and you're saying I'm taking sugar out of my life, but that one day I saw you with that seltzer water
then
that
it's
had
like,
that little bit of
you're a hypocrite.
aspartame.
You're
So
an
okay,
asshole.
but let me ask you this. Let's say you go into like a pact with this other person. You're both gonna cut out sugar, and then you find out that they're not.
Okay, wait, are they not? As in, like, they're hoarding it? Like you said, doing something evil where they got into a pact
It's
because
not
they
about
wanted
evil.
meat? No,
they're just breaking down, and they're breaking down and having.
Dude, that happens. I make.
But
that
they
all the
want
time.
you to continue.
That
They don't.
happens
But they'll
all
judge
the
you for
time.
not doing it.
That happens all the time. That's
and I'm
human
saying
beings.
that I don't fuck with that. Like because
Then
there's
you
a.
don't fuck with yourself. I've literally made pacts with people. And
I
said,
don't
I
force
wanna go
other
to the
people to
gym.
do things.
I want to go to the gym with you. We're gonna be gym buddies. Do you think that my buddies never let me down and say I'm not going to the gym today, man? I don't feel like it. I don't feel like working out. And I go, but we made a pact, bro. You said it was gonna be. That happens, you know. So I mean, dude, I get what you're saying, but I think it's weird to pass that level of judgment on people for not live, like, especially when you do that.
Her.
You 100% are. You literally said you don't think that she should be able to ride Ubers or that she should be able to have a washer and dryer or any of these things because she's proliferating an idea in the government. That's her job. That's just what she does out here. And I don't think that has to have
I
to
guess that
proliferate
really
to her
that
personal
actually
life.
comes more down to the fact that I don't like that my money's paying for all those things. If she was doing all of that with money that came from some sort of private source,
you don't even pay taxes.
I do pay taxes
on what?
On the money that the government gives me.
All the purchases that you make at the store.
And I also, I have to pay taxes on all the purchases.
But you see how the hypocrisy goes on? You know what I mean? Like, it's more of a principle. I just think most times I see people, I don't want to call them some slang, but people who proliferate this idea the most, right, do this to each other. So if they see you using a plastic bag one time, they do that. Well, I thought we made a pact, bro. We were going to save the planet. It's like, no, we are. It's just like, I got to get this from here to there. You know what I mean? Like, I still got to live life too, my guy. You know, like,
you slipping, you falling.
Like, we do live in a world where, like, I
slipping.
don't agree with the government 100%, right? I'm just as anti all these laws and regulations, but I still live in a world where government exists. And so I don't expect everybody to just drop government shit because I don't fucking fuck with it. You know what I'm saying? So it's weird. It's weird.
I would really like to take a look at some of the climate change science that we haven't really talked about because we've talked about the Green New Deal and opposition to the Green New Deal. We've talked about all these people seem to believe climate change is happening, right?
Yeah, they do all seem to be like,
except for the first guy. Except for the
that first guy.
The first guy doesn't believe in climate change.
That first guy didn't seem like he believed it,
but
he didn't specifically state it, but just
I
based
got
on
the
the way that he was talking
I got
about
the feeling.
it.
But scientifically speaking, there are cycles that I don't want to butcher his name again, but I believe it's Milankovitch.
Yeah, Milankovitch. You've been saying it like that the whole
yeah,
time.
and I would like
to. I hope it is.
I hope it's right. But I would like to bring in a little bit of the Milankovitch orbital cycles.
Milankovitch, enter.
So the Milankovitch cycles include the shape of the Earth's orbit, which is known as the eccentricity, right? That's like an elongated, instead of a circular orbit, an eccentricity explains, and it'll show a picture, an elongated orbit. Also, the Milankovitch cycles have the angle of the Earth's axis tilted with respect to Earth's orbital plane. This is the obliquity, and then it also has the axis of rotation's point, which is the precession. And we'll see pictures of this to kind of explain it a little bit more. First one is the eccentricity. So it's on 100,000-year cycles. You see how it moves? This drastically affects
between
our climate.
100,000 years. It goes back and forth.
But like what all this is saying is that we're not on a perfect circle orbit around the.
We're
Earth.
in a cycle of orbit.
Like,
correct.
Yeah.
And now it also talks about this. This is what the second. This is scroll up just a little bit.
Tilt off our axis a little bit every now.
Yeah, I was trying to get the word of. Is it obliquity? Yeah. So that one's the obliquity, I think. Yeah. And
yeah.
then the bottom one is our wobble. So all of these things combined, that's a 26,000 year cycle. I didn't read the one above it, but it's also a cycle on some number of years. If you want to scroll up to the
and so they're all running through the
cycle.
cycle.
This one's in a 41,000 year cycle.
Yeah, they all, like you said, it's just not a perfect system. Like, we're moving in these, like, oscillate. It's kind of like, you know, those little machines that you kick off, you know, and, like, when you kick them off into, like, the spin, they start doing their little thing, but it's not a pendulum, but they don't move in a perfect whatever. They'll just, like,
it's a transfer of
swing
energy
all around, but they'll just keep that energy moving.
So this was something that when I was seeing it in videos, I had to go look it up to kind of understand it. Because a lot of climate change videos that talk about science that are talking about ice ages and the periods in which we live historically, they mention things like this quite a bit. So I wanted to be like, okay, well, how does that affect climate? And it's actually pretty drastic. So when we do go into this eccentric orbit that pushes us away, and then you factor in the obliquity, the wobble, all these other things, you see that like areas where there are glaciers are going to have longer periods away from the sun. They're going to have shorter summers and longer winters. So we could see a drastic climate change that would happen over, you know, maybe tens of thousands of years.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like, as these cycles match up. So, like, basically, you're saying, like, one reason why the glaciers might be melting is that area is now at a point where in all three of these cycles, it's actually closer to the sun than it was thousands of years ago. So thousands of years ago, ice builds up at these areas, and then it gets closer to the sun, and now it starts to melt.
Yes.
And so we're thinking that it's coinciding with anthropomorphic. Is that what they were saying?
Yeah, it could be accelerated by anthropomorphic means, a human means. It could be accelerated, but we could also be that within this cycle,
this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Now, if these things line up in such a way, it could be where, you know, we're causing our temperature to get hotter, and then all of a sudden we're closer to the sun, and now we're desert. You know, like it could drastically change the degrees in Celsius to ruin climates, to almost melt these glaciers, to raise these sea levels to a point where it could be catastrophic. So I would like to show you this video in the climate change document here. This clip here at the 7-minute mark.
Earth's climate cycle is the longest. And
real quick, I've met this dude before.
Oh, dope.
You met this dude?
I've actually hung out with this guy, and he broke down the stars for me, and like.
This was over at.
His name is Matt O'Dowd.
Yeah.
Wow. Shout out, bro.
Yeah, that's fucking.
I would skip it back maybe 5-10 seconds.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
Small world.
Produce a much smaller effect.
This is pretty dense, but
I've gotten this in personal life.
It's not entirely clear, but it may be that we're now so deep in the ice age that it takes all of the Milankovitch cycles together to cause the glaciers to retreat. Eccentricity and obliquity and precession must line up perfectly. The eccentricity cycle is the longest, and so the shifts correspond to its period. Okay, so we're now in a warm interlude, in the depth of an ice age. You might be wondering, when are the glaciers going to rush down from the north, bringing polar bears, white walkers, tauntauns? One thing's for sure, the glaciers will come from the north. The vast oceans of the southern hemisphere provide a powerful buffer against changes in temperature. Ice struggles to build up on water. But even now, northern winters see ice and snow cover the land, all the way down to the continental US, Europe, and China. In summer, it retreats completely. But if the climate were a little bit cooler, then summer may not be warm enough to melt all of the winter snow. Then it would build up year after year, slowly creeping south. Now, by themselves, shifts in Earth's orbit aren't enough to radically change climate, but they are enough to trigger positive feedback cycles. As ice cover increases, Earth starts to reflect more incoming sunlight. Its albedo increases. More ice means less absorbed sunlight, lowering global temperature and allowing even more ice to grow. The glaciation initiated by the Milankovitch cycles accelerates. A second feedback cycle is equally important. Cooler oceans are better at absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and so the Earth's natural greenhouse effect is diminished. there is an unfortunate combination of orbital properties that kickstarts this process. First, low obliquity means less overall sun at high latitudes where the glaciers start. Second, high eccentricity means one hemisphere experiences a bad winter at aphelion, further from the sun.
Pause real
Earth
quick.
also moves.
Aphelion and parhelion are things that he talks about. So the aphelion and the parhelion, I'm not getting them right, I don't know. But one means the point in which you're closest to the sun, and the other one means the point which you're farthest away. And he's referring to the point at which you're farthest away right now. That was what that word meant.
Slower at aphelion, and so those long cold winters are not counteracted by the short, warmer summers. And third, the precession of the equinoxes sends the glacier-prone northern hemisphere into a bitter aphelion winter while the eccentricity is high. So when does this happen next? Well, right now, obliquity is decreasing, and it'll bottom out in around 12,000 years. It's currently winter at perihelion in the northern hemisphere, but it'll have precessed completely to the bad situation in 10,000 years. So, over 10 to 12,000 years, all of that points to cooling. What about the 100,000 year eccentricity cycle that seems to define the overall cycle? Well, actually, we're just coming out of a peak in eccentricity. That should have been bad, and perhaps it would have meant that the upcoming cooling trend would bring the glaciers with it. However, we may have dodged a bullet. See, the recent eccentricity maximum was a sad little peak, and our orbit remained pretty circular. See, as well as the 100,000 year cycle, there's a longer 400,000 year cycle on top of that. Roughly, every fourth eccentricity peak
price chart.
is
Yeah, that's
very
exactly what I
low.
thought too. Like y'all both
Structure.
y'all both cacked back, and I was like, this happened at every price point. Like there's a small trend, a long trend.
You can see that
And the
structure
next
though at the
peak
beginning of that
Yeah.
chart.
Yeah,
It's at the
resistance
same level
right
as that
there.
peak. Yeah.
You can see a triple head and shoulders pattern, and then a rollover right there.
Stable, low eccentricity phase.
Study price charts, people.
Because of this, we're in a long
ABCD pattern right down there on the 4.
stable, low eccentricity phase.
Oh yeah, I see it. Was that
Because
a
of
Gartley?
this,
Yeah, I
climate
think
models
so. It's like a
predict
butterfly
that
though.
we have another 25 to 50,000 years of interglacial period left. And that's only if you ignore anthropogenic climate change. Human influence on the climate messes with the whole equation. With CO2 now at 400 parts per million, it's higher than at any point in the Quaternary period. It's been predicted that this may extend the current interglacial for 100,000 years. So we've probably at least offset the next glaciation, although it wasn't coming anytime soon anyway. The real question is, have we ended the entire Quaternary Ice Age? Also possible. However, the recent increase in greenhouse gases is so large and so sudden that there's no precedent anywhere in the climate record. This makes modelling our influence a huge challenge. But don't mistake that for a lack of
Yeah, why we don't know. Yeah.
Our influence is certainly enormous.
That is super interesting. I didn't know that we went through glacial climate change every 400,000 years.
Yeah, that was pretty. Like once I started looking into the science of climate change and human acceleration and looking at it more as human acceleration and less as human caused, you know, because if you look at it as acceleration, you're saying, oh, natural processes which are happening that we're affecting. That makes more sense than the Earth's just doing its thing and we came and fucking peed in the ocean.
Doesn't it
and
feel
now
like it is though? Like I still get that. Like look at that chart. That's not accelerating. That's just knocking it out the fucking, like that's like us taking a bat and just.
Well, no, but
run.
I mean the thing is like that's an increase in CO2, which has an effect on the climate. But he's saying that it's not causing the changes that we're seeing. It's
accelerating
affecting
the changes.
Well,
I don't even know if it sounds like
we might have been dodging this change or this ice age essentially, but I see those as independent factors, right? Just like eccentricity works away from obliquity.
Yeah,
like
independent of it. Yeah.
Independent. So that too, I don't think that, you know, like he said, if the perfect storm aligns where all these things align, then you're fucked, right? With or without our variable. But then you add our variable in too, we could either override the equation altogether and just catalyst ourselves or whatever. But my point is, it still just doesn't seem like, it's not like we're seeing like, oh, this, millennia was a little bit slightly uptick than the last millennia. Like, we're literally off the charts with this shit right now.
With CO2 emissions, for
which
sure.
we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. That's the thing that I've always said. I'm like, you don't know what the Earth can handle. Like, y'all don't know. Like, the Earth's been around here for billions of fucking years.
Yes.
So the idea that you little infinitesimal human beings have some idea of what the Earth can and can't withstand is comical.
This
to
is
me.
perfect, though, because, hold on, this moves us right into the greatest part about this, which is the Earth will and can survive catastrophic things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because 12,000 years ago or so, we had a glacial impact in Greenland. That's what they think it caused the extinction of the megafauna, like the woolly mammoth era. Like, the reason we saw all these giant animals go extinct 12,000 years ago is they think because of an asteroidal impact. I'm not talking dinosaurs. I'm talking megafauna. And this brings us to a really interesting video that Randall, Carlson, and Graham Hancock talked to Joe Rogan about this impact. Now, this is before they knew about the Greenland impact. In 2016, 2017, maybe as late as 2018, the Greenland impact came out. And they said about 12,000 years ago, this asteroid hit. These guys were talking before that, but talking about it as if it had definitely happened. Because they knew, based on the science,
That would
something
be
happened.
something that could have happened.
Something happened in the Younger Dryas to trigger this whole thing. So this is them pre that information talking about something that was later proven. And I think that's a really cool video to get to. We don't have to click it right now, but I'm saying, like,
You definitely
historically
need to break
speaking,
down the Younger Dryas to me.
I believe they do that as well.
Keep saying that.
It's a period in
Only
time.
thing I still know about
It's
it
like
is the
the
funny jokes.
Mesozoic.
Yeah,
it's a period of time in
okay.
history of the Earth.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
He
if
actually breaks it down.
location or
If you pull this video back before the 7-minute mark, you'll see, if you go slowly, where he breaks down the periods. I would go probably back this way a little bit, and you'll see that was Milankovitch. Yeah, right there.
Our geological period is the Quaternary and is characterized by massive glaciation. Vast ice sheets stretching from the Arctic all the way down to the Missouri River, through Siberia, much of Europe, and spreading out from all major mountain ranges. Okay, sure. Right now, we're in a brief interglacial phase, a relatively summary stretch in which the glaciers have retreated. But these interglacial periods are short-lived. The Quaternary Ice Age has lasted 2.5 million years so far. Its 10 to 15,000 year warm patches are separated by glacial periods that last several times as long. The current respite is called the Holocene era, and it began around 11,000 years ago. Temperatures rose, glaciers and woolly mammoths migrated north, and humans thrived. This new era of warmth and plenty saw the rise of agriculture, writing, cities, and technology. All of our recorded, even our remembered history is of the Holocene. You might forgive us for imagining that these relatively summary millennia are normal for this planet. That is not the case. The current interglacial is already long. Does this mean that the glaciers are overdue? Is
You can
winter
pause
coming?
this if you would like.
To answer-
Okay, so if you go to the document, I have a quick, easy breakdown of the Younger
Somebody
Dryas.
definitely coached him about performing his talk.
Yeah.
Like, he's definitely a scientist trying to perform.
I believe it's the Younger Dryas right there. That's just like a informational that just tells you what it is. It's one of the most well-known examples of abrupt change. About 14,500 years ago, Earth's climate began to shift from a cold glacial world to a warmer interglacial state. Partway through this transition, temperatures in the northern hemisphere suddenly returned to near glacial conditions. This near glacial period is called the Younger Dryas, named after a flower that grows in cold conditions that became common in Europe during this time. The end of the Younger Dryas, about 11,500 years ago, was particularly abrupt. In Greenland, temperatures rose in a decade.
10 degrees Celsius.
Rose 10 degrees Celsius in a decade. Other proxy records, including Varved Lake sediments in Europe, also display these abrupt shifts. Now, this is great to bring us into the video because it explains the Younger Dryas, and these are two guys that are experts talking about the Younger Dryas. I like to say Dryas.
Dryas, yeah.
It's so much funnier.
It's so much better.
The document has a link.
It's probably that first one.
Mm-hmm.
Although this sounds a bit conspiratorial, I think the existing view of history is part of a mind control system in our society. It's something that we're presented with, that we take in with our mother's milk, and we're never supposed to question. I think if you control the past, you do actually control the present and the future as well.
So, but you mean if you have an absolutely established narrative that you're teaching and you're unwilling to look at any possible variations to that, you're saying like...
This is actually the second time somebody pointed to a way where you could like own all of civilization by controlling energy, but also controlling the past.
Yeah. That first guy said that.
Yeah,
too.
a whole different conversation for another time. But I think about when we talk about the Illuminati and stuff, and that's why I always say they're out there. You just can't put your finger on them, because the person who controls the energy isn't necessarily the same person who controls the news, but they both control the fuck out of you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like almost from an
and
authority
it just so
position.
Happens that they all agree on the same things.
Sometimes. I mean, I think they definitely. I mean, they
I think
would
they're
definitely
moving,
benefit from the same things.
I think they're moving to that point about climate change by saying that. Like, I'm pretty sure.
And we know what happened, and we know where we're going.
Yeah.
But if you say, "Shit, we don't know what happened," then it's well. Then who are you to tell us where we're going?
Exactly. And it starts to raise questions over everything. Actually.
Right.
Yeah, and we're kind of in this mode now where. There's a very large growing political agenda around the idea that humans are the sole cause of global change and that we're the dominant force within this whole process. Now here we come along and we're saying, well, no, there's actually been forces unleashed on this planet that really utterly dwarf anything we've done yet. What does that do to that paradigm? You see, that's what I think what we're coming down here to. Part of the
I like this guy.
The scenario now is that humans are engaged in causing the sixth great mass extinction, as we talked about in one of the previous. And now we're coming along and saying, well, wait a second, here's
Also
something
looks like
from
somebody
outer
coached
space that has come in and caused the last great mass extinction on Earth. And what's interesting, I found, is that quite a number of the scientists that have been in the opposition to the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis have been in the forefront of pushing this scenario of human-caused mass extinction and blaming the extinction of the great megafauna that died out 12,000 years ago on human hunters, which, again, we talked about that, and I consider that ludicrous, that, Paleo-Indian hunters using spears are going to cause the extermination of 10 million woolly mammoths before they could even reproduce, along with 120 other species of megafauna.
Well, 65% of all mammals in North America were wiped out somewhere around that time, right?
Mega mammals. Which is over 100 pounds in body weight, essentially. Actually, more, like 75%. 75%.
And it was almost instantaneous, right? Yeah. I mean, it was over a course of a very short period of time.
Very short period of time. The scientists who have been diligently working away in this field since they've published their first paper in 2007 have just brought out a new paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, July 2015, where they're doing a statistical analysis of all the sites where the evidence comes from. And what that tells us is that this is what is referred to as an isochron. This event 12,800 years ago. We're not looking at the effects of 100 or 200 years of events. We're looking at something that happened effectively in a single afternoon across 50 million square kilometers of the Earth's surface.
Ooh, that gives me goosebumps.
So,
a single afternoon.
You're saying that they're talking about this and it hasn't actually been discovered.
At this
to
point,
be
they
true
had
yet.
not discovered the Greenland asteroid.
It was still a
But
hypothesis.
he said the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis.
That's what he's he's talking about. Basically, he's saying that this is probably why it happened. The hypothesis is there was an impact, and then they later found the Greenland using new. We were talking about this about mapping forests or something with like infrared laser beams or something, or like looking in things. Maybe you know what it was? I was watching a documentary. That's what it was, about how they were able to find these lost civilizations in the Amazon and stuff using this very expensive equipment. And that's the same kind of equipment that later went to them, like finding the impact under these layers of ice.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but we can continue if you'd like. This is, it shows a
the
really
world,
good graph.
everything changes forever. And it's fucked for 1,000 years.
Absolutely. And then I'd like Randall to address this issue of continent-wide wildfires, because we do see this in the stratum, that when you get this superheated ejecta coming down on ancient primal forests, consider the effect.
This is Murray Springs, one of the Clovis sites, and this is what is known as the black mat layer.
Where's Murray Springs?
It's in Arizona.
Whoa.
and it's southern Arizona, and it's near the Clovis site, which is New Mexico.
That's the Clovis impact site?
Well, no, the Clovis site was where one of the first places in North America where human remains were found in association with extinct megamammals, such as woolly mammoths. And it's just outside of Clovis, New Mexico.
They refer to them as the Clovis culture, and because that culture was one of the casualties of this comet impact, the comet impact is often referred to as the Clovis comet.
Okay. Yes, and many of these Clovis sites, and there's been over 50 of them around now documented over North America. I think about 2/3 of them have this black matte layer, which shows up very clearly in this image. Now, that black matte layer is black because of the considerable amount of carbon soot that's in it. So in other words, right there, that's the evidence of your wildfires, is that this blanket of soot over the continent that left this black matte layer. And below that black matte layer, you'll find extinct megamammals. Like here, you see the yellow arrow there points to the black matte layer. Now, if you look up, you'll see how it's more buff colored. Mm-hmm. That was the color of all of this, but the soot that was in that black matte layer has dispersed and colored the other adjacent layers. But you'll notice the bones below are the bones of extinct mammals. The bones found above it are extant or still existing mammals. And that layer separates these two domains of extinct mammals and extant mammals.
Just a very clear line.
Yeah, and you can see it shows up so clearly right.
To people who are listening to this, when we're looking at the original image that Randall showed, it's almost like an Oreo cookie. Like there's just a clean line.
12,000 years ago, or 14,000 years ago, whatever, this impact caused a layer of burning wildfire carbon dioxide up into the air to a level where we were finding like archaeological evidence of it.
Yeah, I can imagine like giant swaths of the entire different continents on fire, producing a lot of carbon emissions and shit like that.
Yeah. So what you were saying that triggered this and me into this was that, the Earth can survive. The Earth's...
Oh, yeah. Well, that's one thing I've always really disliked about it, just because, again, I'll say it, like, the way you discuss things and the language you use will change the types of ways that you'll think about things and the solutions that you'll come up with. So when people make this, like, claim that we're going to save the planet, as if the planet is, like, this living thing that need saving from us. Like, that's not really the case, because one, that makes us look really bad, and it makes the planet look like it's like this dying thing. But the planet is not a living thing. Like, the planet is a thing that sustains life. It has life on it, and the process of life is happening on it. But there was a time when there was not any life on the planet, and I mean, assuming if it goes long enough, there will be a time when there isn't any life on the planet again.
And its climate is going to change. It's going to change drastically. We're going to have ice ages. We're going to have impacts.
Quite a bit about this place that we have yet to really understand, I think, is really what this describes to me. Like if you're saying a few years ago they just discovered that for sure another impact happened that wiped out 75% of the large mammals on the continent, which is like a replication of what happened to the dinosaurs, which is like a replication of these Clovis people. Like, seems like that's probably, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, impact, yeah, those two impacts are like, that would lead me to say, like, the global, like, the climate change thing is going to happen after the impact, which means that we should really be worried about the impact.
My question is, was there already an ice age popping, or this asteroid hit and created?
The asteroid hit where the glaciers were,
and it melted them, and then that's what caused an ice age.
Yeah, massive floods. It's
floods,
kind of
it ended the ice age. Is basically what you're saying.
So it made this.
It made this period where it's like very warm, and then humanity started to thrive. It was the Halcyon or whatever period that the guy that you had met talked about. That's basically this impact is what started that period. It completely altered the climate to a point where it was a lot warmer, and there were a lot more opportunities for life to, because let's not forget the greenhouse effect. Like it's called that because we use greenhouses to promote vegetation growth. The more carbon dioxide in the air, the more fuel for vegetation. Plants. Yeah, for plants. And so you can imagine right after this happens, melts all these glaciers, water flows, like fresh water flows all over the planet. It warms the temperature up, and it creates an environment with tons of CO2, creating all these new vegetative growth right after the world's largest forest fire, basically, which is when the most growth happens, is after fires. And you can just imagine how that set up this whole period that we have now become alive in. Like, we're now in the remnants of this period that was started when this impact happened. And I think it kind of ties into what the last guy was saying in the other video. It kind of sounded like he was saying that we actually mitigated that impact, and our added impacts mitigated what should have been a really tough winter, considering we were far away from the sun. And it sounds like what he was saying was that we're going to come back close to it, but when we come back close to it, we'll have all this greenhouse effects, which could lead to like an extremely bad heat wave or something like that.
Yeah, he was referring to like a more drier, more heat.
Right, because as we come back around that orbit to the parenthal or whatever, the other side that's closer to the sun, but we now have all this added stuff that made it nice when we were in the cold time, but now that we're going to circle around and be in the hot time, it's going to be terrible. And so it's like, you can imagine how that might have some problems.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it saved us, and then it's going to cook us to death.
It's very interesting.
But
to look
even
at
still,
nature.
though, we put more CO2 in the air still than that whole period did. So, I mean, because like he said, that dude was pointing to the other graph. We're still fucking off the charts with it. Even
when you go back to the
I guess I assume the Dryas is somewhere.
No, right here, thousands of years before present. So it was like
So actually, that would be that huge increase that they're talking about would be that's 100,000 years ago.
Like right here.
This happened 12,000 years ago.
That interglacial period.
That huge increase that you're seeing was Dryas impact.
No.
Wait, humans lived through the Ice Age?
Through the younger Dryas?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, crazy! I did not know.
Yeah,
that.
we were alive. That's what they were saying. The Clovis era, that was the first.
I mean, I guess I did know
that
that because there's they've discovered cavemen and stuff in glaciers.
Yeah, we hunted mammoths and saber-tooth tigers. And
this also leads to the idea of Göbekli Tepe, where it's like this idea that we were not agricultural previous to this younger Dryas impact
because the climate was too cold.
Yeah, the climate became an ice age, and we were able to survive it. And when it came back, and we in this tab right here, it shows the graph. So there's the younger Dryas period right there, the cooling period. See, it came back up and became livable again. And so when it came back up and became livable again, all of a sudden there was agriculture, there was farming. All those things began to take off in Mesoamerica, in Europe, and all these other areas. And they think that's the whole idea behind the seed civilization theory, is that someone had that technology previous to the impact and was able to hand it down to the people that survived. That was the whole Atlantis theory, the fingerprints of the gods theory, is that a seed civilization planted this agricultural technology into these peoples that survived this period.
Or maybe just the land started to, produce
that too. But they talk about the floods
conditions for
because one thing we haven't discussed about the younger Dryas is there was massive flooding.
I'm still really kind of confused on it too, because the graph shows that it was hot and then it got really cold, but then this meteor stopped that cold from happening and corrected it essentially. So there was two abrupt changes that happened.
So
it
was
abruptly
very,
got cold,
very cold,
and then it abruptly got hot again. And I was wondering, when it said that it happened over this decade, was that the getting hot part again? In Greenland, temperatures rose 10. So then it got hot. So I guess that's what they're saying. This meteor hit, and then that melted everything and turned everything back to normal pretty quickly.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's normal because that side of the graph is much higher than the other one. I think what it is that, like I said, if you combine what he said with the first guy, then it sounds like this left side of the graph where it's low is like the part where we were in the eccentricity, the larger, like the longer side of the eccentricity, where we were further away from the sun, and it was colder. And then the impact happened during that time, which then drastically heated the whole thing up, even though we were supposed to be in a cold era, which would coincide with how we thought that it would continue, where we come back to a hot era and it's extremely hot because now we've had this impact that totally fucked everything up in the quintet cycle or whatever the fuck that guy was calling it. Very sciencey shit.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
Very sciencey.
It's very interesting. But, either way, I guess it does lend to the idea that this stuff, I mean, obviously it can change drastically naturally, but I just where did we come off of thinking we're not natural? You know, like we are natural too. So we are part of this whole machine, and what we're doing is also affecting it just as much as an asteroid, just as much as I only had like a half thought earlier because I thought we were going to lead into it, but I was saying it would not surprise me to find out the person who birthed climate change idea was also the overpopulation guy, because what I've noticed about this in a sense too is like we said, we used less then, we had less, but now it's like we live in a world where there's 3 times as many of us, right, using those same coals and fuels, but also using them at an exorbitant rate that we would not have used back then. You know, even if you think about back in 1910, you had a furnace and a car.
Yeah, no, but
maybe.
actually that's what that guy was saying is actually, if you listen carefully, he said in 1905, 1910, per capita, each person was emitting 10 million tons or 10,000 tons or
like
10
half
tons.
of what we're doing now.
Right, half of what we're doing now, but there
With
was
way less.
a third less people. So we were polluting way more back then than we are comparative. Like the amount is more now because there's more of us. But if it continued the way it did up till now, it would actually be way more.
And
what's
seen a lot of
changed
changes,
that
technology.
has been the technology along the way. As the technology gets better, the coal burning gets cleaner.
Yeah.
And then it gets cleaner and cleaner. And then we find, we're burning less coal because we got oil. And then we get gas and then gas and gas and gas. And right now, natural gas is like the greenest, most efficient one.
You just do some rock massaging.
Right, yeah, what that guy said. So
But
that's what I call fracking, rock massage.
I definitely think that overconsumption is like the underlying problem.
Oh, that's the underlying
what I was
problem
saying
for sure.
Way before any of this, and like when somebody was asking about our dependence on that, like are we addicted to it? I said, yeah, 100%. And that's the same thing I was pointing to. It's like sugar is not bad. There's nothing wrong with sugar. It's your overconsumption of sugar that ends up killing us. And then it's the same with these fossil fuels and everything, and just in life in general. We were talking a lot about like how can we take on, like I take on personal responsibility in this. I don't really care and I don't really believe it. So like if you ask me, like I'm of this mentality that like I said, the earth's been doing this a lot longer than us, and so it's like, and the earth created me. Like I didn't ask to grow to 350 million. Like this is just how nature has progressed itself. Human beings have this weird idea thinking they're not
part of nature.
And it's like we are. Like you're just.
This is all natural.
We're
like,
a parasite.
You might
Who's the real
Who
parasite?
Knows? I don't know.
Because
I don't fucking know. People don't like to go there, but you
their
might be.
idea of what this stuff is. Like they think all of this stuff is stuff, but it's not. Like this stuff is tools for us to. Like this stuff in particular is tools for us to communicate. We've been communicating forever. We just have better tools now. And that's all any of this stuff is. Like all of this is natural.
But it's all made of the same atoms.
It's all made of the same shit.
Yeah.
Like this is no different than us putting rocks around in a circle and building a fire in it so that we can stay warm. That's what this is.
Yeah, it's
like
no different than us making a cave, wall, like amphitheater to amplify our voices.
Well, just theoretically.
We're using our tools to shape our environment.
Your human body is made of like 3/4 of the same thing the universe is made of. Like
Stardust.
there's only so many elements out here, and there's only like atoms. Like I said, they're all the same. So my point is you're natural, and so you're a part of this progression. And I don't know, like I said earlier, I just don't know how you know that you're breaking it.
Yeah.
I don't believe that you can break it. Like if anything, it breaks you. You know
right.
what I mean?
If anything, we will put it into a position where it is no longer suitable for us. But it will continue.
Yeah.
Yes.
But either way, so I just I forget where I was going with it. Oh, so I'm not really big into it. I don't buy into it. Like you said, you could just be going along, get hit by an asteroid too. There's a million ways.
Change your whole
There's
climate.
a million ways.
Well, it's almost
here.
like
You can
maybe the better way. Like we should be talking about climate change if we are accelerating it. Some of the data suggests we are. So maybe we should address it. In the next 20, 50, 100 years, we should get better, right? But why aren't we also looking at these asteroid impacts? Like these asteroids are going to come and hit us. We can't stop them.
Right. So you got other problems.
We have good technology, but we don't have great technology at being able to identify these threats and these impacts. We've had asteroids as recently as a year ago that will swoop right by the Earth, and we'll be like, "Damn, that was close."
That was close.
But
that's
that
one.
They hit all the time. Like right. Like that's been happening.
Little ones hit.
That's another reason why probably people are like, "Yo, you got to protect the climate because that's the atmosphere is that what's protecting you from these asteroids coming and just blazing."
That's
you
a
up.
good point.
So
well, actually, then you would want more stuff in the air because that's what breaks the stuff up.
But still, the point I'm trying to get to is we are not putting nearly as much effort into researching and finding out ways to prevent these impacts and to make sure they don't happen, as we are into this idea that we need to stop using fossil fuels.
Because it's the hot topic. Like you said, that's the idea that's been proliferated. My point, past that, was I just don't buy into it. But I do it still because I do believe in the principles of like I do believe in principles of like living in harmony with nature, right? And so in nature, you never see the lion kill what it doesn't need, right? Or not say never, but for the most part, things in nature take what it needs. It doesn't take extra. It doesn't take excess. It doesn't overconsume, right? It just takes what it needs to do whatever the fuck it's going to do. But we as human beings have this weird idea of like stockpile and overconsumption and like I need as many as I can get.
We've tweaked and tailored the system so that it better suits our short-term needs, not fully grasping the long-term consequences. Sure. Forest fires is a great point. I happen to know a little bit about this because I've done some studying and stuff, and I'm just very much outdoorsy and whatnot. But when you look at, like, I'll never forget when I was, like, looking at the medians on the middle of roads and stuff like that and seeing all the underbrush here in California, in Los Angeles. It's crazy. And, like, there's so much fire fuel just laying around. And that stuff usually doesn't collect because it gets burned out naturally through natural forest fires, which never burn quite as hot as the ones that we end up causing do, because it's not a huge collection of tinder, basically. But when humans start populating an area, we don't really allow the fires to come in that would normally clear all that stuff out. And so it sets up these scenarios. And so I think that really what it comes down to is...
Listen to them Trump scientists.
Huh? Trump scientists. No,
this is the joke about Trump saying, like, we wouldn't have forest fires if you sweep the floors.
You need to clean your floors up. That's why they're...
I didn't know that he said that, but that's... I mean, that's a glib way to say it, but that's a true fact. If you clean up your floors, the fires... It's not that you wouldn't have them. They just wouldn't be as bad. Mm-hmm. You'd still have them. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, though, is that instead of living with the fires or like trying to figure out how we go about it, we just tried to stop them completely. And then we were like, that'll be fine. The fire can't be good. But then we found out, actually the fire, it does good things.
Haven't we been
been
doing controlled burns forever?
We do controlled burns, but when's the last time you seen
I love
them
that
do
you
a
just gave him the
controlled
John
burn out
Stossel.
Haven't we been doing this thing you're claiming we're not doing?
No. We do controlled burns like out in like national forests and stuff like that, which is true. But like the point is that that's where the fires happen, mostly because that's where there's like not a lot of people around to put out the fire, I guess. Like imagine that same scenario happening here. There's a lot more fuel for that to go down.
Look, you're not gonna. What did we start this podcast off when the government comes and seizes your house? Right? Exactly. I'm not gonna let some fucking government forest fire seize my house either. I'm living here. There will be no forest fires while I live here, motherfuckers. Take that shit out into the fucking.
Take that shit to the national park.
But around you better nix them fucking things.
But that's the thing, though. If I take you down to Williker Park, I can just show you. We don't even have to hike anywhere. I can just pull you into the parking lot and show you. Like if I were to throw a cigarette in here and it catches this bitch on fire, it would be devastating. And there's houses that riddle that hillside all over the place. And so it's like I think that we just, again, in a lot of the ways, the same way we did with food, with a lot of stuff, communication, we overextended into the technology sense and we discounted some of the benefits that came from the natural processes of how things worked without that modern society. And so like you're right, we are natural, but I think that there has been this attempt to like separate ourselves from the actual systems of nature. And so that's where I think the people feel like, well, we're not really natural because we don't abide by them. And like what we're saying is like what we need to do is figure out a way to work ourselves back into that system, because that's the system that's going to keep running. And our system is like a fake temporary system that's built on sand.
That's a really good point. Because I even thought, as I was thinking about what I said too, even the sense about like, nature only takes what it needs. But I would say the same, but like, I don't really know what you need. You know what I mean? Like humans, like we have a conscious ability to like decide what we need or don't need. But some people, like I said, if you got $7 million, how am I look at you and be like, you got too much? You don't need all that. It's like I don't know what you need to like fill yourself on a egoic level, and maybe that's the difference. It's like that ego thing is, I don't know. That's
it's also different. It depends. Like if you just have $7 million in cash laying around, That's really weird. But I mean, if like your net worth is $7 million,
if you're invested $7 million,
yeah, like
then
if you just have
that.
like $7 million invested in like a business that you're starting, then you need that.
You need
like
that.
Otherwise, the people that you employ literally wouldn't get paychecks.
Yeah, I thought about this often when people talk about like rich people who have a lot of houses and stuff like that, and they're like, they just have all these houses laying around. I'm like, I get it, but it's such thing as having a real estate portfolio. You know, like they are investing their money.
There's a thing. There's a thing.
That's a thing.
It's funny that you bring that up because
I'm not saying it's the right thing. I'm just saying
it's funny you bring that up because I made a whole post not too long ago about Bernie Sanders having a $600,000 vacation home on a lake in Vermont, but then obviously being like very adamant about finding something to do about all the homeless people and stuff like that. And so it's like another little example of me doing what we got into a little tiff about earlier.
Yeah. But I mean, to each his own. I feel you.
Right. That's what I said. I tried to say that in the story. I don't know if like I'm not the most articulate person, but I was like, I don't have a problem with him having the vacation home. It's just like, take my tax money to like go for the, to fund homeless public housing or whatever. It's like, I think the first house that should be up on that thing is a vacation home in Vermont on the lake.
if I were to come to you and you were in control of the United States government and I said, here's trillions of dollars in a budget, how are we going to address climate change? How much would you put into doing things that are more like right now, like 20-year goals, 10-year goals, 50-year goals, and how much would you say for like future goals of like thousands of years, as in like, learn more about the Earth's climate, what kind of periods we might be going into based on statistical theories?
That's a really good question, because one thing we didn't really get into was the necessary implementation of the Green Deal, like what that means to upgrade. And I don't know if they even know. It's only 14 pages.
They have a lot of goals, but solution-oriented stuff is tough. Because
like we talked about this whole time, technology is what solves this problem, honestly. Low key. I mean, like you said, you're going to become dependent on it, so that it's a balancing act here.
We got to make sure we get it right this time.
Right. In the sense of like technology helps you, but then you can't become like, it's like they created sugar-free, and so now everybody runs around just pounding sugar-free. It's like, it's cool, it's sugar-free. It's like, it's good. It's like,
I tell this to people all the time. They're like, it's sugar-free, and I'm like, is it sweet?
Yeah, like,
and they're like,
still a consequence.
Then there's sugar in it.
There's still a consequence. So, but my point is, like we were talking about, we're using less with more now, and that was due to the technological advancements of that, and then even still so anyways, my thing is, in the same we were talking about earlier, people have a incentive to change. If I create a energy source that is cheaper and more efficient and is also better for the planet, why wouldn't you want to make that swap? You know, if it's gonna be not only beneficial to you in that way, but cost beneficial to you, and that comes through innovation and so I would dump most of it into research and R&D.
That's
I would
a
not
good
create a law that
to
restricts people from what they're
that's
already
appealing
doing.
to people's current desires rather than trying to get them to change their desires or their moralistic stances. Like, you just appeal to the things that they're already looking for, which is something that's cost effective. So like, if you can make what you want them to do cost effective, then I would say that's probably the easiest way to get them to adopt it, rather than trying to get them to take some sort of moral stance and it's going to be a loss on their part.
I would be really behind this if it was called the Green New Energy Deal. If it was just like, hey, we're going to try to make the new energy more or less impactful to the environment, and that's where we're gonna take money from the military budget. We're gonna do all these things economically. We're not going to shut down these entire industries. We're going to start up these other industries and try to
that there's a
transfer.
transition. That's the thing, and I think that the problem with like the timeline, really my only issue with like the Green New Deal is like the timeline of it. Like, if you're gonna get away from my libertarian principles of it, like the timeline is just incredibly too short to make a transition like this without having enormous blowback and unintended consequences that are gonna far exceed
that goes back
the
to them
benefits are.
shooting for the moon.
Right. Yeah. And I think that really, like you said, it's important that we do try to do that and put money into the new technology, because I can also see a scenario, like I just said, over the last 10 years, we became the #1 producers of oil and natural gas because of technological advances. So I could just as easily see somebody coming up with a way to more efficiently get coal out of the ground or burn it better, and all of a sudden coal's having this huge resurgence. And it's like, that's taking us backwards, kind of. We don't really want to go back to coal. We want to continue
Yeah.
past natural gas. But if coal, like if oil, natural gas, and these fossil fuels are the industries where the research and development is being put in because it's where the money's already at, then you can see where the technological advances are going to come from that realm, and we'll just continue to be a little bit greener fossil fuels instead of doing renewable energy. And that's why I think that nuclear is like so important, because it's the closest to undoing the efficiency, like to usurping natural, like fossil fuels as the most efficient.
Is really bad though.
It's the waste though. It's like the waste, and can you make it clean enough? Because right now, like fossil fuels are also very dirty, but they're not as dirty, and the efficiency that you'll get from the nuclear thing, it's hard to say if it'll outweigh the negatives of the waste, because we don't really know what that's going to do in 100 years, 200 years. You know, like the Fukushima shit and like Chernobyl was only last century.
Well, that's the bigger issues. You don't want a bunch of potentially atomic bombs
just sitting around, just
charging,
and they have to be on all the time.
Now nobody needs to have nuclear weapons. You just need to blow up their nuclear power plant.
Yeah, if we just send a Moab to their energy production plant, then we'll just blow up their whole
Now, if you have
thing.
a wind-based energy and it's all being put into batteries, we've talked about before how batteries, you're just gonna have a bunch of batteries laying around. Like that's not good either. There is waste with everything.
Yeah.
I saw recently in the area of wind energy that they were talking about putting these things in the highways in the middle that would collect the wind from the cars passing, and that would be a way to store some energy.
That's the one thing about wind and solar, is that they require so much space. They require enormous amounts of space. Like when we were driving out to Vegas and there was that whole mirrory section.
I've seen them across the country.
Yeah, like where there's just like a ton of solar panels, and we had that whole conversation about how there could be like a building under there and you could use all that space and it wouldn't have to be like quote unquote wasted.
I was talking about how they could just build that on the roof of a building. And now you have all that
now
space
there wasn't
underneath you
a
could
need
use.
for a building way out there in the middle of the desert, but you can imagine at a time where if there is going to be rising sea levels, people from the coast are going to have to go somewhere. People are going to migrate to the middle of the countries. You're going to want that space at some point in time. And so it's like, what are you going to do?
How big is a coal mine?
Huh?
How big is a coal mine?
It's underground, though. You can do all kinds of stuff above it. When you have solar,
I've seen it with that big thing, and there's like conveyor belts and shit. Like they got. So my point is, it all takes up space. I could see a world where the whole Midwest is just like, I've driven back and forth from Vegas plenty of times now. We got the turbines too, and then we got the solar panels. But I can see that. I can see that proliferated all throughout the whole fucking out here in the middle of nowhere. It's gonna take up space, but it would provide the energy you're looking for, which is a big deal. Like like you said, it's not necessarily a waste of space yet. Like there comes a time where we grow into these things. I always think that people are like, it's an overpopulation problem. I'm like, there's still a lot of space out here. Like y'all still haven't figured out how to live. Y'all haven't figured out how to live on mountains yet. You're still like, we're still like tons of places to spread out here.
No, I think that really what it is just like, it's the space, but it's also that coupled with some of the other things, which is just like those technologies really aren't at the efficiency level yet. Like they're much cleaner than nuclear, but nuclear is just vastly more efficient as far as producing energy. Now it's got dangerous waste, but it's not like a lot of waste. Like it's not, as far as tonnage, I don't think it's the same amount of tonnage as like how much air and water pollution you're getting from like fossil fuels, but it's radioactive, so it's like much more dangerous, like where you put it and shit like that. So it's like,
I think my solutions fall into the same category all my principles do, which is I think we should shift the responsibility away from the collective and down to the individual. So I love the individual solutions of like the bikes that power your own home. Like you got to get on the bike and you ride for an hour or two or something.
They don't quite have the technology yet, but it's
moving there. I like stuff like that. I like in Teslas, they use the braking power of the vehicle to recharge its own battery.
Yeah, there's a word for that.
Yeah, so same thing you were saying with the collecting, or somebody was saying collecting wins on cars. I like the idea of instead of creating these big over nuclear power and the government's going to come build this huge nuclear power plant for you to provide across the, I would rather see it break down to a solution that is self-encompassed. Like it's your responsibility to make the electricity, but at the same time it's easier to do because you're only trying to provide it for yourself, and it's clean, in some way.
Yeah, see, I like what you're talking about, because it's like you're not just, instead of thinking about it in a sense of like, oh, if we don't change the whole thing, like if you can bring it down to the individual and change it like the root of the problem, which like you said is like overconsumption. Like really trying to use like fossil fuels or research and development to make other renewable energies like more efficient and cost effective is basically saying like we're going to continue to not only use as much as we're using now, but we're going to use more, and we want to make it so that we can have more and more and more. And it's like, really, maybe a good idea would be like,
if you had to figure out
what
how
if
to get
we
that
just
shit
like
yourself?
did less?
If you
like
had to
maybe
figure
we
it out?
could keep the fossil fuels, but everybody drives 30% less. How much would that reduce your emissions? You know, like you know what I'm saying? Like if you could change the mindset, the way that you think about it,
right.
and that's why I don't like tell people how to live, and that's why I don't live in the woods and shit in a hole and, you know, make compost and stuff like that. Like there's certain parts about that lifestyle that appeal to me and
That's
like
crazy
growing,
when
but
I
Hold
hear
on,
you
hold on.
say that.
But hold on, I have a solution-based idea as well.
Hold
Am I-
on. No.
Let me
But
go-
yes,
let me
he
stretch.
says that. You say I just want to ask because I
What?
just want to understand the logic. You say you don't tell people what to do, but your whole stories, like, and I watch your stories every day, is like 60% you trying to prescribe a different lifestyle to people.
So no. I didn't say that I don't tell people what to do, or rather I feel like what I'm doing is suggesting ways that they could change that I think true, that in my own personal opinion would be better for them and me, because I like to live around the people that I'm trying to get them to be.
But
So
you're
that's
not
all
making
true.
them-
But I'm not making them do anything.
Okay.
Whether you agree with my ideas or anything like that, I'm not going around telling you this is what you're going to do because I know better than you. I'm
okay.
Whatever.
All right.
So
I
that's
just
the
want- I just
difference.
wanna hear the
You can
rationale.
suggest
I
it.
just wanna
I
hear
just
the
don't like the
rationale.
idea of forcing people to change. Like it for me, it's like if you're going to force them, then that's not actually going to change their mind, which is where the problem is. The problem is not their actions. The problem is in their mind. But you want to control their actions. That's not going to do anything. Like if you get a slave that behaves,
So
he
when
still
you say
hates
that,
you.
so when you say that though, you're specifically talking to just people who write laws.
Just people who write laws,
government.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, like because that's why it's like the Bernie Sanders and the AOC. Like I only criticize them for using Ubers and having $600,000 vacation homes because they're trying to force me to live a way that they don't live already. And I'm like, you're cool with it.
I feel like
we're all doing it, but you don't actually live that way. So why would you come around trying to force me to do that?
Yeah.
And now, obviously, people don't feel like it's really forcing because they say like I can vote
gonna
and
get
all
there.
this
I was
stuff.
gonna get there.
Yeah, and so I'm aware that there's ways that I could like.
Well, it's just like the way
influence
you were talking earlier about the language that you use, like really like
It changes the way that you
think about it. So when you say they're forcing you to, I'm
Right.
like they're really just working within the system. Now the system forces you. Don't get me wrong.
Eventually.
but you definitely.
It's not as if I have zero options.
Yeah, and you
it's not as
definitely
if I have zero
benefit some
options.
from
I
that
can
force.
choose which person is going to make policies that forcibly take my money from me. Yes.
Yeah.
As long as they're in one of these two parties that
Yeah.
we present you.
Right. Technically, I
you're
can
not
vote for
really-
somebody else. But you see, this is where it gets hairy because
Yep.
it's like, well, you do have a choice. And it's like,
I know. That's
I know.
It's
but
a long one. I have a
effectively.
solution-oriented thought about this whole climate change thing because I know that we like to talk about solutions on this podcast, not just problems and dangerous ideas. One that I saw that was interesting, and now it's got its own set of problems, is learning how to adapt the way that we habitate in this world to a changing environment. So how do you live if the entire Earth is 4 degrees hotter and the sea levels are 30 feet higher? Like, how do you live? Like, if New York has to evacuate because all of New York is underwater by 3 feet, then, or all of, they talk about the rising sea levels. They talk about Tokyo, Guangzhou, China, like all these like huge
Venice.
hubs. Yeah. All these huge hubs and just being underwater.
Yeah.
Miami.
Harbors,
example.
pretty much every port city would be
So
underwater.
the point being how to habitate. What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, how to inhabit this world where we've had these drastic climate changes if they do happen. So that would be something I would look to solution based, is not just how to slow down climate change so that it doesn't affect us as drastically, but also how to live in those environments.
But how do you
once they
predict
happen.
how it's going to happen?
Well,
though?
technology and prediction models. I think that you also put some power into that because the idea of inhabiting a world that's either really really hot or really really cold, and we don't know which one's going to happen, then you would have to be able to kind of tell what's going on.
Well,
and God forbid it's not a pandemic.
But but in the sense of hot and cold and things like that, and how to inhabit
different climates,
Yeah, sorry.
like weather.
Living on water and living underground are the two things I wanted to get to in that aspect. Waterworld, Waterworld number one,
and subterranean
and number two, subterranean civilization. Those are the two I really wanted to just as solution-based thinking. There are these concepts out there. Now with the water-based one, Waterworld, corrosion from water is a huge deal. Your water world is going to be rusty and covered in, it's like that's not very easy. But underground, come on, people, subterranean.
Yeah, see, already I can see you completely forgetting about the fact that you need the sun.
No, fuck that.
Oxygen.
We don't need no oxygen either.
Well, I mean,
I feel like,
out,
baby.
See, okay,
you said
but
you want to put
they make oxygen,
right?
Like they fill oxygen,
which
like
I
they
like.
make oxygen,
which I like because sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I like that because even if none of this shit does come about, I could use underground living.
Yep.
No
I could have an oxygen
what
machine.
comes
Oxygen
about. Like,
machines
knowing
would be
how
great.
to produce oxygen under the ground help everything. Don't care what.
Oxygenate the ground.
Oxygenate the soil, baby.
The ground.
Oxygen ground.
I think that like that's one other thing that I've always thought about when people talk about like the climate like catastrophes. They're like the sea levels are gonna rise 30 feet. Like that's even on the high end. I usually hear people talk about like under 10.
I was pulling those numbers out of my ass.
But yeah, like I mean, even if it rises 30 feet, like which is a lot, that's like not that much square mileage of the actual world. Like,
Coastline, it impacts like billions of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying though. Like you're saying billions of people will be impacted. Like you're right. If they all just stayed there and let the water grow up over their fucking faces, they drown, which they're not gonna do.
Still though,
they're going to move.
Could you
somewhere
imagine
else.
a mass migration of not even 7 million? That's 7 million.
all
just
the
in
coasts
Los
of
Angeles.
the
It won't be
world.
that fast. That's the thing. It's not going to be a mass migration.
My
I think
mom
we should
was
Google
just
something
talking
about the rising sea
It won't
levels.
rise. It like the numbers I've seen is like over 80 years.
Mom just said
Oh,
that,
that's almost a whole fucking century.
that the and I don't know how right my mom is about this, but housing, real estate prices and stuff in Texas have been going up because so many people have been migrating from these other cities, big cities, New York, Los Angeles, stuff. Everybody's moving to Texas,
Yeah.
and like and so the housing's already going up. That's just on a pandemic that's only been going on for a year. I can only imagine if they really come out and they say, hey, the general consensus is that y'all got 20 years to get the fuck off the coastlines and find a new place. Like you say, it's not a big deal, but I think we were talking about numbers are 2% of the population move on any given year. Like very few people move from where they're at right now. That's kind of part of like the system. Not that we couldn't survive it, but the system will go way out of whack if New York just has to abandon New York City and find somewhere else.
But that's what I'm saying though. Like I don't know if that would actually happen, considering like obviously they'd have to leave at first, but I don't even know, because if it happens over 80 years, then you could implement changes to your city as it happens. Like Venice, the water in Venice rises every year, and they just keep building up and up and up and up. And so it's like, if Venice can do it, like obviously now if a huge wave of water comes in all at once, can't do anything about that. But if it rises slowly over the next 100 years, you can adapt to it fairly quickly. I mean, look at how quickly our societies are adapting to all this advancement in technology. It's only been around for less than 50 years.
This is why I also say I don't believe in climate change. This is why I've always said that I don't think it's as big a deal as people make it seem to, is because of that. Not only the other stuff about but we're extremely adaptable. Like you said, I just found out we lived through the Ice Age. I thought we didn't survive that shit. So it's like, I mean, we've done it through all periods, and if there's just one thing that marks a human being, like what makes us human, is our ability to adapt to whatever surroundings is happening around here. So I could see these things happening, and I can see us creating a machine that gives us false sunlight or gives us oxygen underground or whatever we need to
we actually
overcome
have those things already.
Well, that's my point. But
lights that emit the right kinds of spectrums of light.
If it comes time that we got to get the fuck off this planet, we're gonna get the fuck off.
Yeah, when you were talking about
all of
thousands
us will make
years,
it,
I was like, well, I mean, at that point, I'm imagining you'd have to terraform a different planet.
Well, I was also thinking too, like,
well, you're a liability until you do that, regardless.
When we were talking about like the floods and how they could or could not impact, like, you know, Noah's Ark might have been real.
Yeah.
You know, like the flood mythos.
I literally thought that when you said it earlier and you were like, solution, I was like, there's a solution. You build an ark.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll do that.
Like that's
they'll
not
build
completely
them. I'll
out
never
of the
forget. It'll be
realm
a government ark, you know,
I will
like the United
never
States
forget.
boat.
Oh yeah,
they'll create
I'll
it.
never forget when I found out that there actually was like issues during Y2K. Like there was something like I didn't dig too deep into it, but I listened to a couple of different like.
Oh, it wasn't like nothing happened. But
it wasn't like it wasn't like nothing happened.
Neck.
But what happened was that they found out about the problem so early that they were over time as it started to ramp up and like really get bad. They were able to get together, divert resources, and figure it out.
Like the movie Armageddon. The asteroids come and send Bruce Willis up there, play some Aerosmith, boom.
Fix it all.
Play some Aerosmith. All right, ride me out, Johnny.
How do you know that's not happening? How do you know that's not happening right now? You know, like that's what I'm saying. That's what AOC and them are trying to say is like, yo, what's happening? Like we need to divert now. Like if we don't, you know, and that's what I worry is like you think that we might, but what if we don't? You know, only time tells, but that could literally be the situation we're in now where it's time to innovate. Yeah. It's time to do that. And the consciousness is screaming that out to us, but we're like,
Joe Biden's coming out day one. MARS, Mars, bitches. Red Rock, son.
Let's go. Yeah. I think he's going to sign this Green New Deal into a law.
Oh, shit.
Real quick. Just be like,
hey, well, you know what?
Boogaloo boys ain't going to like that.
Then I'll be waiting for the government to come and upgrade my goddamn house.
Yeah, facts.
Just send me a letter, bitches. I'll be waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Come make my shit green. I won't worry. I won't buy any of my solar panels.
I'll tell you this,
like,
actually,
I'll do all
I'm
that.
down.
I'll wait for all of y'all.
I'm down. I'm actually down for a solution like that. I'm down for any solution they want to come with, as long as it doesn't mean I have to give more money, right? Like, so like I give y'all a lot of money as it is.
Oh yeah.
You know, a lot more than I think I should.
Take a little bit away from that
it's
military
like,
budget
take it somewhere
funding.
else.
Take it from somewhere else.
You got money. You're just spending it on some dumb shit. Fix your dumb shit.
Yeah.
It's just like everybody else out here in the world. They're like, I don't got enough money.
Say, America, how many credit cards you got?
Yeah, it's like you drinking American Starbucks lattes every day. Like you got the money, and if you want to do that, that's fine. Y'all argue amongst yourselves. That's what we pay y'all to do.
Yeah.
That's why I gave you my taxes. Argue amongst yourselves and decide how you're gonna fucking spend it. And if you want to spend it on energy, I would prefer that.
Yeah.
I'd prefer that.
Fix the system and don't force me to be part of it.
Any more money to make it happen. Like, fuck that. I already gave you billions, trillions. Like you said, you already have 75 trillion.
Fix it, America. I'm not going to allow you to implement the changes upon me because of my freedom, but fix it, please.
I'm not going to lift a finger myself, but you better fucking fix it.
Yeah.
No, I am going to lift a finger myself. Over the last year, I've really taken it. It has been over the last year. Taking it on, taking it on. Not as a like a creed or an ethos,
like a religion or anything,
But doing a
I'm
small
not
part.
doing it to prove it to you
or
them or anything. But I do see that there is a problem here. It's like if you have to have that own introspection within your own personal life. Even on a global scale, I look at the way I look at myself, I look at the world and I say, you know what, this is kind of unsustainable. Like this just doesn't seem to be the best way to go about this. I never seen it work in my personal life. I don't see it work in necessarily the global sense. And so I'm gonna do my little part. I started doing things like so funny how you see this. I'm saying you create ideas, but you never live up to them anyway. So I wanted to stop using shit bags, like doggy poop bags. I was like, wow, what a waste. And you'll just see this stuff all of a sudden, like that's why I said it's a thought change. It's not even it's just a change of mindset. Because once I started opening myself up to this idea, because I used to be staunchly against it, like fuck that, nah. But then I started opening myself up to it. And I was like, dang, poop bags, man. Like all of us just out here taking completely organic shit and wrapping it up.
That the universe, like the earth literally already has its own thing that it does with that.
Yes.
And we decided, we're going to put
turn
that
it into trash.
Yes. The mycelium network is the largest living organism network on Earth. It eats poop.
Because you don't
That's
like
what it does.
the way it smells to have the animal that you want to hold. So it's just weird, right? So I started seeing that for what it is.
Disease.
And I'm like, yeah, that's what they say.
That's one of the small, but that's only like if you're like shitting and then eating close by and allowing it to taint the water.
Yeah, like when people talk about like
I've been in people's backyards
where
they got shit up to the fucking knees.
Yeah, like it's like
the water's still
there
clean.
is such a thing. I know this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people. There is such a thing as hyper sanitation to a extreme level that is not good.
That's unnatural.
Because in the same way that people are now finding out about like a microbiome in your gut, like a whole ecosystem of bacteria in your gut, that's like outside too. Like there's a whole ecosystem of bacteria, and a lot of them are doing things that you don't understand, but they're very good. And so like when you're spraying Clorox all over your counters and stuff, like you're not just killing the bad bacteria, which might be there. You're also killing all the bacteria there. It's like chemo. Like you're just spraying chemo all over your apartment. And it's like after a while that's gonna add up.
That's what we're doing with shit bags too. So
yeah,
I was like, so I started trying to do that, and I got a little scooper thing. But it's hard with the scooper because then you get shit on your scooper. You got to wash your
You gotta
scooper
clean your
off.
scooper.
You
Yeah.
got to take
Takes
it
a
with
lot
you
of-
every
yeah, oh,
time.
yeah.
It doesn't really fit in your pocket. You can't just put a shit scooper in your pocket. So
Nor would you want
like,
to.
This is why nobody wants to do any of this stuff, though,
Right.
right? It's like
The
there's
technology does not yet exist for poop be gone.
Well,
where you
because
can
it
just
is
which
walk
I
down
thought,
and-
though. I said, why isn't it? You know, this is what must be everybody. Global climate change is probably sitting around thinking, like, how come I got a 45-inch LCD super liquid TV, but I can't get poop be gone? Like, you never figured out how to spray some type of ammonia or some shit on it and just let it dissolve. Anyway.
No,
I digress.
the nature has its own poop be gone. You just leave the poop there. As it rains, it dilutes
does.
into the ground,
So
and
that's
then
what
it
I
be
said.
gone.
So rather
Just
than
doesn't happen very fast.
I want to live in the system where I live in. I don't want to be just like contrarian and say fuck you, pick up my shit. Like I don't care, right? So I was like, I'm gonna start doing the pooper scooper thing. It's just a small little tweak to my routine, right? That save maybe 100,000 fucking little plastic bags in over a year. And then I started looking at like, how do I reuse a water bottle? We stopped using paper towels. You know, I was like, dude, we could just get a towel and you wash the towel. Like you don't have to just keep reusing these little paper pieces of paper, right? You have a thing that could do this 1,000 times. And so, but it was just a shift in mindset, you know? And then, like I said, I'm not like, it's not a big thing. It's not like a huge, I don't feel
It's
like
not
I'm
Waterworld.
saving the, you know, I don't feel like I'm saving the earth at any given time.
Yeah, you're not like out here trying to
But-
virtue signal about it. Like
Right.
I walk out with a pooper
Right.
scooper. It's
And
just
there's
like-
times where you're gonna catch me fucking it too, you know. But it's like I'm generally moving in that direction, you know. And so like that's where I think we should all be with it. In the end all for me, and this kind of I guess my wrap up on this. I don't know if y'all got more. To
I'm
talk
ready for
about,
a wrap
but
up.
I'll wrap up.
Yeah, like
I actually have one thing I'd like to wrap up with.
okay,
but-
well you can put it in there, but I don't know how big a deal it is. So you said I don't know, but I'm also not the guy out here who makes people do things or tells them what. I'm just me. I'm just living my own life.
Yep.
making
Setting
my
your
own
example.
I'm in control of my own choices, my own decisions, and so for me, I'm gonna do what I always do, which is what I can. You
Do
know,
what
I'm
I
gonna do
can,
what I
baby.
can, and so I've been making these little changes, and it really isn't as stressful as you think it is. You know what I mean? It's difficult at first because you're not used to it, but then once you get used to it, then it just kind of becomes the new
Yeah.
normal.
Like if you don't buy the bags and keep them by the door or whatever, like our complex has them like installed at places. But like say you're at somewhere that, you know, doesn't have that. If you don't buy the bags and you just have the scooper there, you're more likely to take the scooper.
Yeah, it's
in the
just
same way that
small
people
habit
say like
change.
if you just at least show up at the gym, you're probably going to work out eventually.
Mm-hmm. Small
So,
habit changes
small
lead
habit
to
changes.
big
Yeah.
change over time. Let's just hope we got that time.
Yeah,
All I
for
can do
real.
is hope we got that time.
So one thing I just wanted to highlight, one person here at the end, solution oriented and all, Bjorn Slot, the founder of the Ocean Cleanup. It's on the Instagram and everything. He just has, I think they just released their first product. Bjorn Slot is this guy who, he's a very young guy. He's like my age, 25, 24. He invented these machines that go through rivers and go through the ocean and clean up plastics, even all the way down to microplastics out of the ocean. And he's making recycled products out of them that he's selling and then taking the money and then putting it back to create more of these machines. And I just really like highlighting people like this because like he's obviously very passionate about it and wants to make real change when it comes to like protecting the environment, obviously, but he's solution oriented. He's like, well, then I'm going to invent this thing that cleans the plastic out of the ocean.
Yeah.
Like if I think that the plastic in the ocean is a huge problem, then I'm going to go to school to learn how to engineer a device that literally just chugs along the water and scoops up all this plastic. And then he sends it off to recycling plants and he makes products that people can buy that then help fund the project. And see, like, I just, not to like shit on Greta Thunberg or anything, but like, she's not really doing anything. Yeah. Like, as far as I'm concerned,
She's
she's asking other people to do stuff. And I'm like, this man is not very much older than she is. I mean, like I said, he's in his 20s. So, you know, maybe 6 years. So he's got maybe like a college education on him. But he got on her. So he's got a college education and then he makes these wonderful machines that seem to be doing amazing work. And it's like, this is the kind of shit that I can get behind. You know, like somebody coming up and being like, I've created this awesome solution. Help me get behind it. Please, you know, like it's a request to people's better nature, which I think is in everybody, rather than coming around with the, you better do what I tell you.
How dare you?
I can't.
How dare you?
My joke is, would you still love him if you found out he drove Ubers?
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he takes Ubers all over the place. I mean, he flies all over the place and does interviews and shit.
I had to bring it back around town.
It's always funnier when you bring it back. It's always funnier when you bring it back. I have enjoyed this podcast. Climate change is something that I feel like my mind has been tugged around on for a while.
Yeah,
you know, to kind of wrap it up for me, I always thought like, damn, humans are really fucking this shit up. And then I started thinking, once I started learning about the younger Dryas period and the impact hypotheses and things like that, I started thinking like, okay, maybe we're accelerating. Maybe we're not necessarily fucking our Earth up, but our Earth is cyclical and we're contributing some way to these cycles, whether positively or negatively. Maybe we don't quite know. And that's kind of where I'm landing at.
I
with
think
it.
that's
After looking into the scientific angles and looking into the historical angles, that's kind of where I'm landing. I'm landing at this, I'm not sure, but if I was to put my money on it, I would say that we are impacting our Earth in such a way by living the way we are in a negative manner, and that we should probably change within ourselves and our society to adapt better to nature.
Yeah, and just keep trying to chug along in this bitch.
Chug along in this bitch. Pick up all the plastic, recycle the fuck out of it, make some sunglasses.
Come on, baby.
Yep.
I will note though, I checked out because I've been on the hunt for sunglasses. You might have noticed I bought some new ones. I did not buy these because these are expensive as fuck. And that just takes me back to like, you have to be rich to fucking care about the environment.
That's
like
true.
these glasses, like I'm sure like it can't be for profit because they're putting all the money back in the project. Now,
well,
I mean,
I was going to say
it
comes with a donation.
Right,
like
it comes with a
the
donation attached to it. So it's like, I don't know how much of this goes into like the production of the glasses and how much of it is just a donation.
Shit,
but
Nancy
these are
Pelosi lining her pockets with that money.
Dude, these are €215 glasses.
Whoa.
These are expensive.
That's a pair of
fucking
Ray-Bans.
glasses.
These are designer glasses.
It's like $280.
But I love that though.
Like
I love that because what makes this any different than a pair of Versace's?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, like that's the same. So he should go out that because in two you get the same feeling. Like if you like you feel cool when you put those Versace's on or whatever the fuck. If you're an ocean cleanup person, you feel like, hey, these are made of ocean plastic, bitch. Like,
yeah, it literally that little
that's a big
QR code that's on them. You can scan that, like show
Find out
people
where
that don't
your
believe
shit-
it's the only product certified to be made 100% out of materials that come from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
It's dope. I do like that. So it's good. It's a good place to end that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thank
too.
you, Internet, for joining
Appreciate
us
ya.
in this climate change adventure. And until next time, we'll catch you later.
Yeah.
Peace.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber,